pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, good evening, everyone. Select Person Colby has realized that he has a conflict, so he is recusing himself from tonight's, from the special permit process. I would like to entertain a motion to open the continuance of the public hearing.
Motion to open the continuance of the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so this is a special permit application, and approval of this application is going to require 4 out of the 5 select board members vote in favor of it. I'm going to, before we begin, Attorney Duchesne, I'm going to ask Town Council Mead if she could please just give a quick little overview on the right to request a permit.
Sure. There have been a lot of, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to do this quickly. There have been a number of comments that have come through essentially implying that the applicant doesn't have a right to apply for a permit or shouldn't be here. And I'm just to remind everybody that everybody has a right to apply for a permit. Whether the special permit granting authority deems it appropriate to grant that permit is another story, but everybody who owns a piece of property has a right to apply for a permit under the zoning bylaw, which is what's happening here. So they're properly before the board, just like anybody else, any other property owner would be for this particular kind of permit, and whether or not they get that permit or not is up to the board as to whether or not they meet the criteria. So I just wanted to throw that out there for at the request of the chair.
Thank you. Okay, so Julie, I'm going to ask you, has the applicant submitted proof of a mailing to all the abutters?
Yes.
On the certified abutter list? We've got the green cards back and the tear sheets showing 2 ads for the daily news. Thank you. Okay, Attorney Duchesne, I'm going to...
Madam Chair, members of the board, good evening. For the record, Douglas Duchesne, representing the applicant. And I do have a short presentation for you this evening. But before I begin, I just want to address a question that was raised earlier this week about essentially relating to the fact that my client has proposed to provide overflow or additional parking on lots adjacent to the primary lot on which we're seeking the special permit. They are lots owned by his family. However, the question came up whether, because we're using an adjacent parcel for overflow parking, should I have given notice to each of those abutters to that parcel as well, which we did not do. As I'm going to present in a moment, I'm going to show that we generally have adequate parking on the lot itself to support the permit, although I would have to be honest to say that there could be a couple of instances where an event would be large enough to need overflow parking, and we would look to the overflow parking. So if the board, depending on how the board analyzes this, my client is happy to, after this meeting, we could continue and we would develop a formalized parking plan for you, and I could provide notice to those handful of abutters, if any, that are adjacent to this ancillary parking spot. But I would like to present this. I would like to have an opportunity to show you that we have adequate parking on the lot for 98% of what is proposed to occur there, and then I'll certainly take lead from the board as to your preference with regard to a more formalized parking plan and a re-notification if that's what's necessary, if you're not convinced that we can address our parking on the lot. I apologize that we've had these administrative notice issues. As you know, Mr. Jesperson filed this, and there was a few missteps. I tried to rectify those, but in doing so, didn't realize that we had this additional lot to consider. So I can assure you, we have no issues with providing notice to anyone and everyone who is entitled to it, and we certainly wouldn't ask the board to do anything unless you're satisfied that we have done so. But let me, if I could, let me just give you the presentation of what we're doing. Again, my name Douglas DeShane. I'm with Finneran and Nicholson in Newburyport. Damon Jesperson was the applicant here. Unfortunately, Damon is out of state with work. However, his brother Evan and his father Marshall are here this evening to answer any questions that you might have. So as a quick summary, my client is seeking a special permit to allow for indoor and outdoor recreational activities on his property at 1 Marsh Meadow Lane. The Jesperson family is proposing to make such recreational activities in the barn and the farm in general more available to the Newbury community at large, and especially to the artisan and agricultural communities. In doing so, they hope to not only provide a wonderful amenity for the town of Newbury community, but also to help in ensuring the long-term financial stability, sustainability of the farm. As you know, many local farmers and farm activities do struggle economically, and so we see a lot of these farms looking for ancillary uses and activities on their property so as to provide that sustainability that's so difficult in today's world. The proposed use will not be significantly detrimental to the immediate neighborhood or to the town in general. Rather, we propose that it would provide recreational and educational opportunities and access to the farm and the surrounding area and open space to the public at large. The determination as to the need for the indoor-outdoor recreational special permit was made through the building inspector. He had written a letter to my client saying that for his proposed uses, he should be applying for the indoor-outdoor recreational special permit. Unfortunately, as you'll recall, my client may have misread that and applied for the commercial aspect. So we did correct that, but we are here for the special permit for indoor and outdoor. And of course, I know at the time when my client was talking to the building inspector, he also did, there was some information supplied by town council. So that's why we're here, is that it was determined that in order to provide the recreational activities, that this was the permit we needed to apply for. I know Attorney Mead said that my client's entitled to do so, but I did want to let you know that we were essentially directed that was the permit needed. So just to give you a quick overview, and if I may, Madam Chair, this is Orchard Street here. 1 Marsh Meadow is here, the barn, you can see the barn here. This is Marsh Meadow Lane. This is the entirety of the property that was controlled by the family. However, the activities we're talking about are down here on Lot 6. So you can see we have access off of Orchard Street. This is a private road, and it is quite a distance from Orchard Street till you reach the beginning of this, several hundred feet, till you reach to Lot 6 where the activities are proposed. If we could. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just to give you existing conditions, the overall farm was 134 acres in size. In 2008, the family did a subdivision. They did an open space residential subdivision. They created 6 lots. However, in doing so, they preserved 64% of that land, some 85.91 acres, as preserved open space. So they were very conscientious in doing their subdivision to do it as an open space and only create 6 lots. The barn lot, which is the subject of this permit, is just over 3 acres in size. The barn, the building what we're speaking to this evening, is a 160-year-old barn that was recently restored by the family. And if we could jump over. So there's a picture of the restored barn. And Julie, if you could just kind of, what I've done is kind of giving you a shot from all 4 sides. Well, there's an interior shot. That's what the inside of the renovated barn looks like. And what they did is they actually disassembled the entire barn down to the ground, and then reconstructed it using the same materials, except when they got to something that had been rotted or deteriorated, it was replaced. So you'll see that there are some new beams in here, but for the most part, these are the original beams that were taken from the barn when it was deconstructed. So here's a view from, I believe, the south. And if you want to just sort of jump around it, and there's from the back of the barn, from where the horse facility is, looking back at the barn. There's the left side of it, looking down over the horse farm. And then here's the other side where it abuts Marsh Meadow Lane. So what I would like you to take away from these pictures, and we will be discussing about it in a minute, and that is parking. And as you can see, could we go backwards perhaps 1 or 2? I mean, there is a large parking area here adjacent to the barn. You can't see it, but there's parking behind the barn on the other side of that fence. And then you can see there's a significant area there that can be used for parking if necessary. So there is a lot of area on the barn lot itself that could be used for parking. I was just speaking with my clients and with Evan, and Evan said that they felt there's probably easily 40 to 50 spots readily available right now around the barn itself, on that lot itself, and that there's at least, there's certainly more than enough room to double that if necessary. But as I'll get to in a minute, we don't expect a lot of parking for 98% of the activities that I'm about to talk to you about. The only times we would expect to have the need for 50 or more cars would be on the occasional, and I think I put in my thing 4 to 6 or 4 to 8 times, but again, talking with my client, it's probably going to be 4 at most, where they want to have a big activity that would require parking. And of course, as again we'll get to in a moment, there is a nearly limitless space for parking on the adjacent lots that are controlled by the family. But again, if we were going to be proposing that, or if it was part of the permit, then I'm going to have to go and I will re-notify and get the folks that are within 300 feet of that ancillary parking area that might be used a couple times a year, to give them an opportunity to review this. As I said, we are willing to notify and wait on anything that the board feels necessary to ensure that we've provided adequate notice to everyone. So if we could please sort of go to the end of the photos, I can get into, all right, so just a little history on the property. The farm's been owned by the Jesperson family for just over 40 years. As I mentioned, in 2008, they subdivided the property into an open space residential development, creating 6 lots and a very large open space parcel, 86 acres, in fact. Currently, the horse farm is operating, the orchard. They are growing onions, garlic, they are producing eggs, and are doing limited wood harvesting as well. So this is an active, ongoing farming activity, and they are continuing to make it work. The goal here is to make the farm financially sustainable, while at the same time providing public access and amenities that will result in preserving the agricultural history of the land and in preserving the property itself. I don't have to say or tell you what kind of development pressure is put on parcels like this. And, you know, as generations change, those pressures get worse, and sometimes we see our farms being developed. In this case, the Jespersons made a concerted effort to do the open space residential development. They were able to create a number of lots for their family members, a large lot for the horse farm, the large open space lot. So there's really only, I believe, 4 house lots that could potentially be built out here, if you don't count the horse, where the horse farm is as a lot. It is buildable, but that wasn't the intention. And the lots are, for the most part, are very large, the barn lot being the smallest one at 3+ acres. So that's just a quick background on the property.
You ready to go
Next one,
next?
please. Thank you very much. When I first met with Damon to talk about this, one of the things I did is I pulled out your your master plan to see what it had to say about farms and what the town wanted to do. And I just pulled out a few highlights from your master plan because I feel they're just so on point and so relevant to what we're trying to do here today. First of all, a general goal, a general overall goal. One of them was to preserve community character and the rural nature of the town while enhancing the richness of the lives of those who live in and around Newbury. And again, in trying to create a sustainable farm here and to use that farm for some really great recreational and educational activities, I think is in keeping with this goal. That we're going to help maintain that community character, that farming aspect, and we will be enhancing the richness of lives of people who live in town by having this amazing facility and these wonderful programs available. One of the highest priorities in your master plan, and this was, I think, dubbed, you know, the top 5 or whatever, but of the highest priority, it was actually bolded in the report, is to enhance the viability of local working farms. One of your top priorities, and this is exactly what the Jesperson family is trying to do, is to make this facility viable so that it can remain a farm and can remain, you know, undeveloped beyond what's already been done. Some of the other highlights of your master plan was to facilitate the use of open space residential developments. Now, this one, the family's already satisfied. You know, when they chose to subdivide their property, they went right to the open space residential development, which is what your master plan calls for, so that, as I said, I believe 60-some-odd% of their overall property is now preserved indefinitely for open space. Coordinate economic development. I think, you know, this could be viewed in a way as economic development. So obviously, it's in your hands. Support home-based enterprises. I guess a farm is the ultimate home-based enterprise, isn't it? That you live, work, play, all right, on your farm. And this is what we're trying to do. And then, of course, a big part of your master plan is to preserve natural resources. And the report states that agricultural land is one of the most important and community-defining assets in Newbury. Meaning, you know, the character of Newbury is dictated by that agricultural history and the agricultural properties that survive. Lastly, in order to preserve natural resources, we protect open space. The Jespersons have already done that by putting 68 acres of their land into conservation, restricted open space, and quite frankly, by continuing to maintain the farming activities, they are in essence preserving the rest of that property from development. last couple of points from your master plan: preserve prime agricultural land and working farms. Directly on point. And lastly, retain the town character and the agrarian history, which, as we know, is agricultural farming. And so, again, this is a major goal of your master plan, as well as my clients. So what are we proposing to do? From an indoor perspective, and I showed you pictures of the barn, and that barn is still used for farming activities. They do dry products in there. They store things in there, equipment and other things. So this is going to continue to be a working barn as part of the farm. But in terms of indoor recreational activities, my clients would like to do some farming and agricultural training and educational classes, teach people about farming, show them how it's done, you know, maybe hold seminars, maybe hold a class. I mean, there's any number of kinds of programs and activities that they've been discussing relating to, you know, the farming agricultural uses. Theater programs, providing, you know, maybe acting lessons, music lessons, a rehearsal space for the local theater groups or local school groups. The barn would make a wonderful, wonderful place for indoor theatric activities. Art classes and studio space for artisans. People have been going to the farm and to the barn for years to paint or to show their paintings at a craft fair. There's just endless requests for people to be able to utilize the barn and the farm for painting, and my clients feel that perhaps they could even include some art classes, drawing classes, painting classes, so that you're right there where you're painting and what you're painting. So, and then we've discussed health and welfare types of programs, providing things like yoga or fitness classes or meditation class or, you know, nutritional wellness classes, seminars, just activities related to, you know, wellness and physical well-being. Most of those same activities could be done outdoors, and I've kind of listed a few of them here, you know, out and about the barn, the farming and agricultural training and educational classes, including, you know, you could actually take people to the farm, to the horses, to the orchards, to the fields, you know, to actually have hands-on experience with those activities. Certainly art classes, outdoor areas for use by artists, as well as the venue to exhibit their art and crafts is applicable outdoors, maybe even more so than indoors. And then other more outdoor centered recreational programs could include outdoor fitness classes, trail development and maintenance programs. There are significant trail network in the open space and about the farm. So, you know, you certainly could teach people about how to take care of those trails, how to create them, how to manage them. Also, forestry management itself. There is forestry management, some wood processing that's occurring. And so that's certainly a great opportunity to provide those kinds of activities. But also, as you see listed, organized nature walks, which could happen year-round throughout the farm and the forested areas. They could conduct mushroom hunts, sculpture walks where, you know, sculptures and other artworks have been displayed out and about the farm, and you could actually have a class or a recreational activity where, you know, you walk around, learn about the artist, learn about the art itself. Bird watching is a significant amount of potential bird watching areas and things, so maybe we run a class and teach people how to get out and do that. And then possibly we've talked about providing some public access to the trail network on the farm. So this is just a list of the potential kinds of things that my clients would like to be able to do, the things they'd like to introduce the community to, while, you know, getting people out to the farm, getting people to appreciate what's there and why it's there and how it can stay there. So really trying to get back to some of these master plan goals of preserving and supporting our farms in our community. I do want to note that the Jesperson family does currently work with local agricultural and farming organizations as well as local schools to not only support farming programs but to provide opportunities for kids and adults to get out to the farm and be exposed to and better understand what farming and agricultural activities are all about. So they do have some outreach now with with one of the local schools and with the local agricultural groups, and they want to continue to foster that relationship and again make their facility more available to the community. So that's just a list of the uses. Now, I'm not saying they would propose to do all of that, but these are the kinds of things we've talked about. These are the things they would like to potentially offer and work with the community on. If we could go to the next slide, please, Julie. So I want to talk a little bit about the intensity of the uses, because I've just listed 30 or 40 activities, and although the vast majority of them would only be done in the summer, spring, summer, and part of fall, because the barn is not heated. So most of what I'm talking about would be at night, during the summer or the warmer months. There is a possibility to do some outdoor activities like hiking or trail stuff, or I guess bird watching if you do that in the winter. But so really most of what we're talking about would be during the non-winter months. So we're really talking about sporadic programs. Generally they'd be like one session. So if they're going to hold a seminar on mushrooms or mushroom hunt, it would be a one-off activity. It's not something they'd offer every week on Tuesday. And in fact, most of the classes would be a one-time kind of class. That's not to say there could be limited time frames. Say, for instance, they decided to do a painting class. Maybe they would hold it once a week for 2 hours, for 3 weeks. But these aren't proposed to be long, semester-long programs. They're really smaller, more sporadic kinds of programs. We expect small groups, 5 people, maybe 20 at the most, for a drawing class, or maybe if they're going to do a nature hike or something, you might get 10 people who want to do that. But these are not big events. They're not regularly scheduled events. They're going to kind of be sporadic, and they're only going to be during the summer months, so to speak. However, my clients would like the ability to have between 4 and 8 events per year. Now, by event, I mean more people for a one-day activity. Note that the barn has a capacity of 100 people. So if we were going to do something indoors, we could not have more than 100 people attending. If we do an outdoor crafts fair, that would be different. I do understand that there was a crafts fair held there either this summer or last year. And in fact, I understand there were some parking issues that raised because of that. But again, these aren't the kinds of things that are going to be done regularly, perhaps annually, like that Christmas fair or the spring yard sale kind of thing, or an art show. Be once a year, be for one day. Now, I do know, although I don't have a good understanding of how often or when, but I do suspect that my clients have some horse events at the horse farm, and so they must have intermittent groups there associated with the horse farm. And in fact, talking about one of those, I do understand that they had there was a noise complaint because they were using a bullhorn to announce winners, and I guess that really carried. So it was noisy, but once my clients were told of that situation, there was, as I understand it, no more bullhorns, and things were toned down as far as announcing winners. But we're not proposing like a full-time commercial enterprise here at all. It's not going to be an ongoing business. It won't be named. It won't advertise. There will be no business hours. There'd be no regular operations. This will kind of be a sporadic word of mouth, maybe Facebook, we're having an art class, or we're going to have a little art show. So that's the way this would be. We are not proposing to convert this to a commercial enterprise by any means. This barn is still an integral part of the farm. It will be used as such. However, we are looking to provide some ancillary uses for it so as to help with the sustainability of the farm. I know that you've got experience with other operations in town doing similar things. I think, at least in my opinion, they're wonderful opportunities. They do some great things, and at the same time, it's preserving that agricultural heritage. Clients really want to share the property and the activities they are on with the community as a whole, but they are looking to really connect with the artisan and the agricultural communities within Newbury, because that's, that's the people that want to be there. Those are the people that want to really take advantage of this amazing facility. So, special permit justification. I know that being a wonderful story and a great opportunity is not enough. We have to show the board that in order to qualify for this special permit, that my clients are meeting the legal requirements and at the same time will not be substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. It's our position that allowing the use of the property for the indoor and outdoor recreational activities, which I just discussed, will not be substantially detrimental to the neighborhood and will provide unique opportunities to the community while meeting the defined objectives of the master plan. This is just what your master plan speaks to, and we can do this without being detrimental to our neighbors. In terms of not detrimental, as I showed earlier, we have a very wide open, safe, and easy egress from Orchard Street onto the private way. We've got great sight distances. The roads are all of sufficient width, just really a safe means of in and out. We have adequate parking, and I'm going to go to a plan in a minute, but as I said earlier, we have the capacity to house between 40 and 50 cars on Lot 6, which is the barn lot. We've got a whole area that could be expanded for parking if we needed it to at least double that. So we could probably show 100 spots just on our lot, but as my client did show you on his plan when he filed it, there's just significant amount of available parking throughout the area adjacent to this property. So I understand that when there was a crafts fair or something previously, people were parking on Orchard Street, and they were parking on the entrance to Marsh Meadow, and to be honest, that was not necessary. If people either decided to or were directed to actually come into the road and go past the barn, there would have been no need for parking out on the main street, and there wouldn't have been the problem there should have been. My clients have already committed to, if they have a big event, they will have parking people to make sure people get onto the property. Don't park out on Orchard Street. Get onto our property so that you can park in a safe place that won't bother anyone. We're not going to have a substantial impact on traffic, although, things might get a little busy, at the height of an activity. But again, we're only talking 4 times a year. I don't see traffic problems from, 5 people or 10 people coming for a drawing class or to go on a nature walk or to take a mushroom class. That would be non-impactful at all. But when we do have a larger activity, again, the egress and access from Orchard is well defined and shouldn't be a problem. And to the extent necessary, my clients would commit to having, parking people. I should stop for a minute and just say that my clients have met with both the fire and police department. I believe they came out to take a look at what they were proposing, to take a look at the parking, and to take a look at the egress and access. And there should be in your package or as part of the application 2 letters of support from the police and the fire explaining that they feel that we had addressed all concerns. In fact, the police, the fire department said that, that they were in support of it, and that my clients have demonstrated their willingness to work with them and to make sure that everything is done correctly. And the fire department, the police department echoed the same sentiments in saying that, that their purview is reflected upon public safety implications, and that at this time, they've concluded that all concerns regarding traffic control, parking have been addressed, and that they support the use. So my clients have actively met with them to make sure that the parking, the egress, the access were accessible to them, and you've got letters of support from both. Moving on, there will be no demand on water or sewer services. The barn is not, there is no sewer or, a septic, sewer or water at the barn, so we're not going to be drawing on those services. And there'll be no unreasonable demand on other town services as a result of these activities. I can't think of it, but I don't see where we would be demanding any additional or unreasonable amount of town services in general. We're not going to have an impact to water resources or the wetland resources. We're not proposing to build anything within those areas or park or anything else. So really no changes that would impact water resources or the wetlands. No generation or discharge of hazardous materials. So, and these are criteria under your special permit requirements. So it may seem, why am I addressing hazardous materials? But I need to tell you, there will not be any generated or discharged or stored. The applicant will have to provide private water and septic services, trash collection and disposal. So they're going to be self-sufficient on all of that. Again, will not be looking to the town for any services in those regards. As you might know from the pictures earlier, if you've been to the property, it's a very private setting, and quite frankly, I'm not sure how many, if any, neighbors will, be visually impacted by activities at the barn. But as you can see from the pictures, most of our neighbors are a significant distance away, and most of them have significant wooded buffers between their homes and the property, especially those on Orchard Street. We will be, we're not proposing any new construction at all associated with this. The barn is ready to go. And I believe that we are compliant with all of your zoning bylaws. In fact, obtaining this permit pretty much seals the deal that we are in conformance with your bylaws. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, we have support from fire and police departments. So that is my position in terms of why we will not be detrimental to the neighborhood or to the town in general. And in fact, I do suspect, or I do propose to you, that we would be providing some benefits to the town. And those being, that the activities will provide recreational and educational opportunities to the community that are potentially not available now, and certainly not as hands-on as we will be. It will provide a unique opportunity to the artisan and the agricultural community in Newbury to, interact with like people and to, just support those communities, that the artisans and the agricultural folks in town. I think very importantly, we're going to provide educational opportunities, especially relating to land preservation and agricultural activities to younger people, younger members of the community through these, these agricultural groups, 4-H, things like that. And then, of course, working directly with the schools to get kids out on the farm and to see what goes on there. And last, without question, this project will help in meeting the goals of your master plan and preserving and supporting Newbury's working farms and supporting the preservation of open space. So not only do I feel we won't be significantly detrimental, I do think they have some amazing, amazing benefits to provide to the community. And I guess, so here, I just want to jump quickly onto these are the parking plans that my client submitted early on. And, excuse me, I don't mean to put my back, but what they are proposing is to prohibit parking, obviously no parking on Orchard Street, but they are also proposing to prohibit parking along Marsh Meadow at the entrance all the way up to the barn, and here's the barn. So we won't have people parked here interfering with people coming and going. We want to get them into the property. Here's the lot for which we're seeking the special permit, Lot 6 as shown here. Here is the barn. As you can see, we already have significant parking here, there's some here, there's some here, across the street, but still within the lot. There's a huge field here that we could park on. We're saying we've got easily 40 to 50 spaces there, but in talking with my client, all of this area in here is parking, and there's a nice flat graded area here that if we needed to expand, we could. We could easily get 100 cars on that site without any of the additional parking we've proposed. But again, I want to be honest here, this is more than enough parking for 98% of our activities, but there will be that, 2, 3, 4, 5 one-time bigger events where we could need additional parking. So we want to show where we could have that. So they're showing additional parking along the roadway here. If we could go to the next. So just to orient you, that last plan ended about right here. This is now farther down the road. This is the horse facility here. And I apologize. This wasn't intended to show parking on the open space. This is sort of the legend or the key, especially when I notice there's a wetland there. We would never propose parking. All this is saying is that the blue stripe and the yellow stripe are proposed overflow parking. We are not proposing parking on the open space parcel. We've prohibited parking, down here where the house lots are. But this is the ancillary parking that could be made available on Lot 5. There's the horse facility here. There is a massive parking lot here. All the way up through here is parkable. Across the street, a huge, flat, leveled area. Literally hundreds of cars can and have parked here for horse events. This is what we would propose if we needed overflow parking. But as I've just discussed, we can currently show about 50 spots on our site, and if we needed more, we could house them on the site. But the reality is, we don't need that much parking for a 10-person nature walk or an art class it'll just be those, those big events that we would need overflow parking. But it's readily available. This is land that is controlled by the family, so there's no questions of whether there's permission or whether they'll be able to do it. That's already been committed. So I just wanted to give you a little more overview on the traffic and what was proposed, but I definitely want to clear up the fact that that overflow parking is not meant to show a potential parking space. That's just the key for the map. So we're not proposing anything in the open space whatsoever. I think there's one. So in conclusion, and I do appreciate your time and consideration, allowing the use of the farm for the proposed indoor-outdoor recreational and educational programs will provide the community of Newbury with numerous benefits, including meeting critical goals and objectives under your master plan, and that can be done without causing substantial detrimental effects to the neighbors or to the community at large. And I think my client's willingness to, again, we'll go to as many hearings as you like. We will notify anyone you like, and certainly if we need to go to the planning board for a presentation for them, we're happy to do that. My clients have been very active in working with the fire and police to make sure that this can be done right and that they won't cause detriment to the neighbors. They are willing to do whatever it takes to make this a win-win for everyone, but it's certainly going to be a huge benefit to the town if this can be allowed. So with that, thank you very much for your time. Happy to answer any questions. As I said, Evan and Marshall are here. if you have any questions about the farm that I can't answer, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Thank you for presenting that to us. So I'm gonna actually turn to my board now and ask the board if you have any questions based upon what we just heard from the applicant. Who wants to go first?
I have one question.
Yes.
Are you going to allow public participation?
Yes.
When? Because I noticed a lot of animation.
Yeah,
From
no,
the
we're gonna go
crowd,
through the
so-
board first.
Oh, okay.
This is the public hearing?
Yeah.
So this is the time we hear from the public. But do you have any questions based on what you just heard?
Yes,
Before we get to the public?
I do.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
I noticed on your slide that under proposed use, it wasn't included weddings, but in the paperwork we received, it was listed as weddings. And if we use the Spencer P.S. Little Farm as our model, they have weddings every single weekend. And in my opinion, hosting weddings is a commercial enterprise. And you said there's no commercial enterprise. I think that is, in fact, a commercial enterprise. And I know that there'll always be an issue of alcohol servings at weddings. So what's your take on that?
Sure. You are correct. When my client first applied, and again, you'll recall he applied erroneously for a commercial entertainment special permit, which is not allowed in this zone. I explained to him that weddings, formal functions like that, really do start to move towards the commercial side of things. So as you can see, we are no longer proposing that. Now, I have to say that, I could see where someone might want to do that, have a wedding here, and if it wasn't allowed under the special permit, then my clients couldn't do it. I don't know if they would be prohibited from, applying for a one-day event, thing like that, if there was a wedding to be had. But no, we are no longer proposing that this would be a formal events center, because you're right, that's not in keeping with the with the recreational aspect of things, as opposed to, as you've said, a more commercial venture. So I've informed my clients that the special permit does not allow that, then that's not something they could do under that permit. Again, whether they could apply for an occasional one-day license to do that, that would be entirely up to this board or whoever grants those permits. I know other people do that on occasion, and of course, as you pointed out, Pierce Farm does it as a regular, I assume, ancillary use under their agricultural permits. So I'll leave that to you, but no, we are no longer proposing to be a regular event venue, because the law doesn't allow it.
Right. And also, having in-laws who were caterers, I couldn't anticipate how you would do a wedding without a water supply.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. I mean, if somebody wanted to do a very rustic outdoor little ceremony, I guess you could do that, but
Yeah.
they're not going to have full, you just couldn't
Yes,
have
yeah.
full catered, I mean, I guess you could, but you saw the inside of the barn. It's not really, I mean, there's a capacity limit of 100, but, with the beams and everything, it's kind of a, it's a broken up area. I purposely removed that from the filing I made, because the question of whether that was a commercial activity or not was raised, and we concluded that it was. And so it's not part of our request, because I don't think it's allowed under your indoor-outdoor recreational special permit.
No, and actually, can I ask Mr. Burnett, our building inspector, can you speak to that with the weddings, events would be can you come up,
Yeah.
explain to the board?
No, I think that, to be honest with you, I think that's where everything kind of went sideways here. It
Yeah.
was my assumption that this would be the art fairs, the Christmas, the craft shows, that sort of stuff. They would be almost one-offs, and then it sort of took a life of its own. But no, that wouldn't be. It wouldn't be conducive because, first off, if it goes to, it all depends on the assembly use. If it goes to an A2 from an A3, I don't mean to get technical, but then you're gonna need, then sprinklers kick in, and it's cost prohibitive, there's no water there. You could put a dry system in, but then there's no heat there, and it's just not, it's not a conducive use for that.
So currently, right now, the way our zoning stands, is it your opinion that events like weddings would not be allowed in that location?
Right. And I've gone over this with Doug as well, it just wouldn't be practical. We wouldn't be able to do it
Okay, thank you.
for fire code reasons mostly.
Okay, so it wouldn't be allowed.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, it just, in the paperwork we were given, it still included weddings, although it's deleted from your presentation.
I believe it's also, after we came in and I reviewed the application that called for a commercial entertainment special permit, I resubmitted new information and went through the proposed uses. I apologize if I wasn't clear enough in the letter, but that was supplemental information that was meant to supersede what Mr. Jesperson had filed originally. So everything I've filed since, I sent a letter with the detailed explanation of the proposed use under the indoor-outdoor recreational permit, which is what we're seeking. I also answered all of your questions under your application, those 17 questions. Again, you'll see there was no mention of anything relating to weddings or commercial activities. The reason that was included originally is because the permit he was seeking was for commercial entertainment. They were looking at a broader circle. And when we went back to the indoor-outdoor recreation, which is what the building inspector had suggested we needed for the, the educational and recreational activities, I did change that. So I apologize, I didn't withdraw the original stuff, but there's nothing in the paperwork that I submitted that suggests that. We are here for indoor-outdoor recreation, which these kinds of activities fall under that purview. We're not asking for a commercial entertainment license.
Thank you. Okay, Jerry, do you want to?
Yeah, and I'm not sure where I saw this or heard this, but in the past, was there ever a fire at a barn in that area?
Okay.
Can you come up?
Give them your name.
Come up, please. Yeah.
Okay, Marshall Jesperson, 169 Elm Street in Byfield, and part of the family. So, the question is?
Was there ever a fire in that area that involved a barn?
No, not since we've owned it. We've had it for some 40, well, wait a minute. There was a horse barn fire, but that was not on that lot. It was on the riding stable, and that happened in November of 1990.
Okay. And that was not part of your horse farm?
It was part of the horse farm.
Oh, it was?
Killed 70-plus horses.
Okay. Oh, wow. And do you know what caused it?
Arson.
Arson, okay.
Wow.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Jeff, do you have any questions of the applicant?
This is kind of directed at the Jesperson's attorney, and it's more of a muse, but it's a question. I notice that we're moving towards educational uses. Are you aware of, or is this part of the idea? Do you have a definition for like the as of right uses that we have under some of our educational components of our bylaws?
Yes, I'm very familiar with educational uses, and I know that, you know, educational uses, if we were proposing strictly educational uses, we could potentially be looking under the Dover Amendment, which allows educational activities as long as the property is owned and controlled by a nonprofit or the Commonwealth, would allow the educational activities by right, without a permit. We have really tried to focus on recreational activities, although to be honest, we couldn't focus on the recreational activities without talking about classes, you know, about instruction relating to that activity. So, you know, we can go out and we can do mushroom hunting, and we can go out and, but you're gonna have to learn about them. There's gonna have to be a class. Things like snowshoeing, hiking, there's no question, right? It's a pure recreational activity. But there's a fine line sometimes between educational and recreational. Certainly a lot of recreational things have an educational component, and there are a number of educational programs that have a recreational component. So, but what we're looking to do here is to get a special permit that will allow us to do the specifically indoor and outdoor recreation. But I mean, I have to be honest, there will be instructional types of things, like educational types of things.
My point being, sometimes people do forget that if you go to that strict educational use with the use of a nonprofit or something such as that, we don't really have the right to condition those things, because it says our right.
Yep, I do that, and I believe if you'll recall in my client's original filings, he spoke to that. He spoke to the fact that, you know, we could create a nonprofit, we could, you know, have the property titled into that nonprofit, and then technically we could run, as long as we were running, you know, as long as we operated as a nonprofit educational institution providing, you know, educational programs, you're right. Technically, we could do that as a matter of right. But as he said in his letter, he wanted to be honest here that, you know, this wasn't intended to be a strictly educational thing. There's a big recreational component and an outdoor component, and so he just felt, after talking with the building inspector and I know with input from town council, that he wanted to come forth and seek a special permit so that he could do the recreational things and the educational stuff. By permit, which you are correct, sir, you could now condition, even though there were educational activities. We understood that. He just wanted to do this in the most transparent way and be honest with what he wanted to do. And again, he was honest at first that he thought he could do weddings and things. But, you know, we've now learned what the law, or we now better understand the law, and we are asking for a permit that would limit our uses to the kinds of things I've talked about, which you could also condition.
Thank you. Do you have another question? Dana, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I want to touch on the commercial thing again. So the letters say that, you know, maintaining a farm is expensive. And the initial intention was to try and recoup some of the money for the farm. So what we're saying now is that we're not going to charge a dime to anybody for any of this stuff? Is that what we're saying?
Not at all. We're gonna have to cover expenses. I mean, there's not gonna be a profit taking here, but by generating, you know, the fees to cover overhead and to, you know, pay the teacher, and, yeah, there will be some.
So it is gonna be a commercial operation.
I think
Well,
Mr.
why don't you come up, Marshall?
I think before I could answer that, I'd have to know what your definition of a commercial operation is.
Making money.
Well, if it's just the passage of money from one hand to another, then in the agricultural sense, we're a commercial operation. And so I think what we're looking for is the ability to hold some events which do generate some money to support the farm. And this is something that we've seen in lots of farms in Newbury. And so I don't think we're looking for anything that is what you could call a commercial operation. I run a commercial operation. We go there every day. We do all of this stuff. It's a very different feel.
Thank you.
I
get
it.
Mr. Dana, excuse me, I'm gonna let the town council
I just want,
opine on that.
because I want to clarify something. So they're not coming in as a nonprofit, right? So
Correct.
under the use, table of uses, the use is indoor and outdoor recreation areas and facilities. It doesn't say it can't be for money, but then that's different than what they originally applied for sure, Mr. Packard, which was the commercial entertainment, which is a completely different thing. So it doesn't say
Gotcha.
under the indoor outdoor recreation that has to be not-for-profit, like if you were to do the educational nonprofit, okay? So you could do something to make money under here. It doesn't prohibit that from happening. You just have to decide eventually if that's what it is. But the answer is, it doesn't prohibit it under the use table.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Is that clear?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Do you have any additional questions?
I do.
Please go.
I'm looking, I have here that this reference is from the National Fire Protection Association, and I know that the chief is familiar with this, and I don't think the barn meets the egress requirements for, I want to say even 50 people. And you're talking about you want to put 100 people in this barn. Jerry brought up, the fire that has happened before. And, this document here, it talks about a lot of things. It talks about doors swinging outward. It talks about crash bars. It talks about a lot of stuff. And I understand that there's two 16-foot sliding doors on both ends of that barn. If those doors are closed and there's 100 people in that barn and that barn catches on fire, I can guarantee you a lot of those people aren't going to get out. And you could say, well, we have 15 staff members or 20 staff members that, potentially could, get the doors open in time. But according to this, the fact of the matter is that the doors,
Thank you.
the doors have to meet certain requirements to have that many people in a building. And those doors don't meet those requirements.
Okay. I'm gonna ask the fire chief to come up and speak to, well, both, actually, come on up.
Doug's deference,
Why
it's
don't you-
really not, that's my issue.
Okay, so that's your purview.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, what would happen is if this was approved and the use was narrowed down, and I've met with Doug about this, and I've talked to Damon about it, is my whole idea was to get it to be an A3 92 occupant load, which it doesn't require sprinkler systems. There is path of travel egress that has to be met, but that would be done with what we call a Chapter 34 analysis, which is kind of a fancy way to say it's a code analysis on an existing building. So that once we had that list of uses, and they were all A3 uses, we could require, before they could use it, to have that Chapter 34 analysis. And if at the end of the day they had to cut in two 36-inch doors that open to the path of travel, then so be it. In going by the math and what I have in my code, that would suffice. There are exceptions for rolling doors, but they don't apply to A3 use.
So
Okay.
if I could, Madam Chair,
Yes.
just to help kind of orient everybody here.
Please.
So, just like any application, there may be multiple approvals that are required, right? So if you build something you want to build a house and it's near the wetlands, and it's a pre-existing non-conforming house, you might have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, who would issue a permit on the non-conformity, and separately, you would have to go to the Conservation Commission and get a permit from the Conservation Commission, right? You would need both to do it. And an applicant goes to certain areas or jurisdictional requirements in town in order to do that. Here, the board's purview in this particular instance is as a special permit granting authority under zoning. That doesn't mean that the individual meets the building code requirements, doesn't mean that the individual meets the site plan review requirements under the planning board either, right? So in this instance, you haven't gotten here yet, but you're gonna ask Peter in a little bit, because you hear it from the planning board, that they believe site plan review, at least minor or stage 1 site plan review is required of this, right? So that, an applicant has to get multiple permits, and there's no requirement in this scenario to do it in any particular order. So if you were to approve certain things and you had limitations on whatever was being asked of you, then Peter would go and say, okay, now I see what the limitations are. Well, I see what the board has given you, but you can't do that under the fire code or the building code. You'll have to do X, Y, or Z, right? Now, let's say it requires them to put an additional door in that barn. Well, they've got another layer there that they would have to resolve because there's a historic preservation restriction out there too. So there are multiple layers of each application. You're one of them. You're one cog in this entire wheel, and your cog is, should this permit be issued for indoor, outdoor recreational activities? And if so, should it be limited in any way? And beyond that, the other jurisdictions are going to take care of their part of this permit. And maybe it'll be granted, maybe it won't, but each individual entity has their own jurisdiction.
And our special permit would incorporate all those approvals. In other words, with,
Everyone is separate, but you
Right.
can't do it, they couldn't actually use the property until they get all their permits.
okay. Go.
I've been agonizing over why I don't have the ability to access like site plan review and other mechanisms such as Concom to help me make my decision. I've been saying, I remember the golf course, and we were able to utilize a lot of different concepts to
Yeah.
help us make our decisions.
You can
I've
still
been
do that.
agonizing over this, but now I understand that we almost have to see if we reach a threshold of allowing the use before we trigger the other boards helping us make something we should have known before?
Well, no, so not exactly.
I'm
So
a
if
little
you,
hard. It's hard
so
for
I
me.
want to take the site plan review as an example
And
here,
remember, I
right?
haven't had a site walk yet, so I mean,
Right, you can have that.
but I'm just saying,
Right.
none of this would probably work in a little house like on Plum Island, let's say, or something, because there's no
Well,
parking, so we
Right,
gotta,
right.
I just, you
So
know,
the question is, if one of the criteria is, and one of the things that has been proposed is that there's no problem with traffic and there's ample parking, right? But you haven't seen that on a plan that's scaled, for example, which is something that typically you would get from the planning board, but you as a special permit granting authority certainly have a right to ask for that plan so that you can understand how many cars can actually be parked on lot 5, right? Because I'm going to disagree a little bit with Attorney DeShane. The parking, the lot across the street is actually a separate lot. It's lot 1, right? So if there's parking proposed over there, that's a separate lot. That's allowed, it's allowed under your zoning, because it's owned by the same person and it's within 250 feet, so that's allowed. But you're allowed to ask for how that parking is laid out, because that's part of your review. So yes, you can ask all of those questions. I'm just saying that you're agreeing to or not agreeing to this permit doesn't mean that they don't have to go get those other permits too. You have to remember what's in your purview. Certainly what's not in your purview is the building code, right? That is solely in this purview here. So if you decide that they're allowed to have activities there, and you say that the activities can be 100 people, I don't know, I'm just making that up, right? Then he may say, sorry, I don't care what the board said. The building code's not going to allow you to do that, right? So yes, you have to make your decision, and yes, you can ask for more information, and yes, you can go out on a site walk, so you can fully understand the impact of what's being asked and how that is incorporated into your decision, pro or con.
And in some ways, Attorney Mead, it behooves us to understand where we are before we ask maybe the Jespersons to spend a lot of money with the site plan and our boards to go through a lot of trouble.
Right, so I think the chair is obviously is gonna hear from public comment, and then I think you have some threshold determinations that you might wanna make. Namely, do you believe that the uses are being proposed fall under the indoor and outdoor recreational use category? And to what extent? Maybe some of them do, maybe some of them don't. I don't know the answer to that, but that's a threshold determination. And if, depending on where you are on that, then if you need more information, like a scaled site plan that shows parking, you should ask for it. You should ask for a site walk, right? You should ask for at least them to have at least one hearing with the planning board so you get a better idea of that. I think the answer related to the Conservation Commission has been taken off the table tonight because there was explanation from Attorney Deschaines that said they're not proposing anything on the open space area near the wetlands. So I don't think that's an issue any longer.
Thank you. Thank you both. Is that clear, board? Clear as mud?
Sounds like a round robin to me.
Madam Chair, if I could, and that's what I was alluding to early on when I said that, would like to get our presentation, get the board and the abutters an opportunity to understand what we're asking about. But in light of some of this confusion on the parking, I had suggested that what we could do is we would step back, continue the hearing at some point if the board so agrees. And we are proposing to actually do a more formalized parking plan, which we would then go in and submit to the planning board with a short presentation, just informal presentation, which would then allow the planning board time to review that, to address what ultimately would be the site plan issues. If we go back to, or if we're granted a use permit, we do have to go back and go through site plan review with your planning board, where they will address parking and access and egress and all those safety things. But you're correct, it's kind of a chicken and egg, right? You'd like to hear from them that they're at least, comfortable with it so that you can consider that. And I think we have the opportunity to do that. I mean, I know you want to hear from the neighbors, as do I. We want to hear what the issues are. But then what I would likely do is respectfully ask for a continuance so that we can go do a formal parking plan, which we could then submit to the planning board for their review and comment to you. We could come back to this board, and if you so chose to grant the permit, then we would have to, by law, go back to the planning board for a formal site plan approval, where they would essentially verify everything that we've talked about. I think that's the best way to proceed. My clients would like to do that because, again, they're not hiding anything here. They want to do it right. So if you want to, and plus I do agree, that would give the board an opportunity between now and your next hearing to come out, or to the next time we meet, come out and see the property. We would love that. We'd really like you to see, get a feel for how isolated it is and how vast the area is. So that'd be wonderful if we could do that. But
Okay.
I'll let you proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, any other questions of the applicant?
I do, but I don't know if it's in the right realm, so let's
So do you want to hold them for now?
yes.
Okay.
Is it something you really want to hold, or ask it now?
Okay, I'm familiar with the historicals commissions and the rebuild of the barn and the premises that were set during that barn rebuild. So, like, when you're talking about maybe cutting in doors and stuff, that would not be in compliance with the original historical commission approval of rebuilding the barn in the first place.
Yeah, I would have to see the exact wording of the preservation restriction.
So
that's-
that was the only thing I
Yeah.
wanted to add, is I don't see where any modifications of the barn can be made. I'm just throwing that out there.
So-
You know?
Yes, Marshall, come up.
And Dana, that's a good point.
Thank you.
It is a good point.
Thank you, Dana. It is a good question. And when we looked at rebuilding the barn, one of the things that the planning board told us was that we had to rebuild the barn looking at the guidelines of the Department of Interior preservation and reconstruction of historic places and buildings. We've done that, and we have complied with all of those issues. Some of the things in those guidelines have to do with fire safety and what you can do in order to make sure that you have the safety covered, even though you're preserving the historic nature of the building. And so we'd have to go back and take a look at it, but there is a guideline for that, and in the guidelines, upgrading for certain more modern requirements are covered. So happy to do that, but that is one of the things that is in that document.
Thank you. That isn't our jurisdiction, is it, Lisa, the select board?
No, and that's why I was hesitant about bringing it up, because I don't think it is, so.
But it's a good point. I mean, it's one of the layers, right? It's one of the layers that I talked about, right?
Yep.
So even if you said yes, and let's say Peter said yes, that the historic commission may not say yes, right? So
Thank
it's one
you.
of the layers.
Okay, any other questions, Cherry, based on?
No.
You heard, Jeff, you good? Okay, you good for now? Okay. So,
People?
yeah, we're gonna open the hearing to public comment. But actually, before we open it up to public comment, Peter, I do have a question, one more question for you. Besides what Lisa just said regarding all these other layers, do you see any other permits or anything that he might need from any other boards or commissions?
Well, originally, when this came in, I was looking at it like it's being presented now, and where it was an existing building with no new construction and no set established new parking. I'd be honest with you, didn't see the need for that to go for full site plan review.
Okay,
I thought that the administrative review by the boards at the time of the application, if they thought, and certainly, I'm not a young guy, I've been wrong before. I can deal with that. But if they thought that it should have a full-blown site plan review, then I can certainly see it, but it just, there wasn't enough concrete, this is what we're gonna do, I'm building this is the parking, I'm open 8 to 5.
Right.
7 days a week.
yeah,
like
I understand that.
Like a normal site plan review.
Right. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so now I'm gonna open the hearing to public comment. Before we hear the public, there were some comments received by other boards and committees here. There was, let me see. We have heard from, these are all preliminary because the applicant hadn't given us what he proposed use really was until just now. So based upon the application that was sent to all the boards and committees, we have heard from the Public Health Director, the Board of Health. It's read and reviewed the attached special permit application for the property located at Marsh Meadow. I do not see any Board of Health issues regarding the proposed activities. As stated in the application, Board of Health permits may be required. So if they have food, they may need a Board of Health requirement.
Wouldn't they need a permit for the portable toilets?
They may. That would have to,
They would have to do that on a case-by-case basis.
Yes.
I don't know that they do, though, but it doesn't, right.
that's not our purview, that's theirs. The Conservation Commission had a brief discussion, held a very brief discussion on Marsh Meadow special permit. Chairman Connors asked the commission members to take time to review the application for their next meeting on 11/15 and plan to gather any comments together to submit to us again at our next meeting. Their intent was to have all comments compiled and sent out to us on 11/16, because there's a 35-day time frame to return comments to our board from once these other boards and committees receive the application. So they're reviewing that. I'm not sure, as Attorney Mead said, that that's relevant anymore to what the applicant has decided, but we shall see. We also received from the planning board, and I have the chair of the planning board here, Larry. I don't know if you want to come up and speak to this?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Larry Murphy, 30 School Street. I'm Chair of the Planning Board. We did, this matter was referred to us per the zoning bylaw on October 26th, which said, and as the Chair has just indicated, we have 35 days to give you our responses. We wanted to get you something for tonight.
Thank
So
you.
we held a hearing on November 2nd, and we did prepare this letter, which I can summarize for you or read into the record, whatever you would like, or simply answer questions. I would view it more as a preliminary response.
Okay, why don't you speak to it?
Sure. Well,
The board hasn't seen it, so if you would prefer to read it, actually, why don't you read it? Because the board has not heard
be
it.
happy to.
And actually, I haven't read it either. I just got it myself.
Okay, then we'll all get it together.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All
Larry.
right. So it's dated November 4th, 2022, regarding 1 Marsh Meadow Lane special permit application for indoor and outdoor recreational use. The applicant, Damon Jesperson. I should point out, some of the issues raised in the letter have been touched on tonight. So we have, dear Select Board members, we have received for review and comment Damon Jesperson's application and supplemental materials requesting a special permit from the Select Board for use of the barn and land at 1 Marsh Meadow Lane for indoor and outdoor recreational uses. These materials were submitted to the Planning Board on October 26, 2022 by Julie O'Brien and also by Douglas D. Deschaines of Finneran and Nicholson, PC, the attorney's attorney, and include the following. Special permit application dated March 30th, 2022, applicant Damon Jesperson, received by the Select Board on July 25, 2022, in supplemental information, letters, and attachments from Douglas Deschaines, Finneran and Nicholson, PC, dated October 18th, 2022, October 19th, 2022, and October 26th, 2022. The Planning Board discussed this special permit application at its November 2nd, 2022 meeting, and based on the materials received to date, which we note are at a fairly conceptual level, we offer the following preliminary comments. While a special permit application per the legal notice requests approval to conduct indoor and outdoor recreational activities in the existing barn and on the land area at 1 Marsh Meadow Lane, the actual proposal as submitted includes the use of other properties within the Marsh Meadow subdivision to support those activities, including parking on the lots at 3 and 4 Marsh Meadow Lane, and we did interpret the plan as the open space as well, so I'm glad that's off the table anyway. And on Marsh Meadow Lane itself, see comments number 3 and 4 below, as shown on the plans that were submitted with the special permit application. We would suggest requesting more clarification of what portions of the overall subdivision will be used for the proposed outdoor activities. We would also suggest requesting that the applicant submit a site plan drawn to scale, showing specifically where parking will occur for the various proposed activities both smaller regular activities and larger occasional events, and how many cars can be accommodated in those locations. And there's also note, see comments 3, 4, and 5 below. Item E of Mr. Deschaines' letter of 10/19/2022 states that no other permits other than possibly a BOH permit for the portable bathrooms are expected to be needed. We would request consulting with the building commissioner for determination on whether any other permits or approvals are needed for the proposed use of the barn and the site. Further, should occasional large events be allowed, we would suggest that the Select Board consider requiring as a condition of approval the sign-offs be obtained for each specific event from the police department, the fire department, and the health department. Item F of Mr. Deschaines' letter of 10/19/2022 states that no new construction is proposed. However, we would suggest that the applicant clarify whether he is contemplating any exterior improvements associated with the proposed uses, including but not limited to regrading or resurfacing of designated parking areas or installation of exterior lighting to support evening or nighttime activities. If so, plans, catalog cuts, and other materials describing what is contemplated should be submitted. We also note that the farmstead at 1 Marshmeadow Lane has been recognized as having historic value and that there is an existing building restriction on 1 Marshmeadow, the historic premises, which is intended to ensure the preservation of the characteristics, quote, that contribute to the architectural, landscape, and historical integrity of the premises, end quote, including but not limited to, quote, the landscape, all land that exists in Lot 6 at this time, the dwelling and barn's exterior features in the premises setting, end quote. Those are quotes from the restriction. Any exterior alteration to the premises will need to be done in accordance with this restriction. With further reference to parking, item G of Mr. Deschaines' letter of October 19th, 2022 states that there will be no parking allowed on the public ways, including Orchard Street and Marshmeadow Lane. However, the plans submitted with the application show parking along both sides of Marshmeadow Lane from approximately the location of the barn up to the beginning of the turnaround at the end of the cul-de-sac. We would suggest requesting that the applicant clarify whether Marshmeadow Lane, parenthesis, which is a private way, close parenthesis, will be used for parking or not. If it will, exact location of parking should be shown on a site plan drawn to scale as noted in number 1 above. Further, if parking is proposed to be on both sides of the street as shown, we would suggest consulting with the police and fire departments that there will be adequate access for emergency vehicles along Marshmeadow Lane to all of the lots in the subdivision during large events. Item L of Mr. Deschaines' letter of 10/19/2022 states, there are no proposed changes to the barn structure itself or to the topography or surfaces of the property. As noted above in number 3, we would suggest that the Select Board request that the applicant confirm whether any exterior improvements are contemplated. If any regrading or resurfacing will be done to accommodate parking, the proposed work should be shown on the site plan suggested above, and the plan should include new and existing grades to indicate whether there'll be any increased stormwater runoff, and if so, how it will be managed. As noted above, the comments are preliminary, and the Planning Board may have further comments as reviews of the application material, may have further comments as it reviews the application materials in more detail. If any additional materials are submitted to the Select Board by the applicant during the public hearing process, we will be happy to include them in our review. Sincerely, Lawrence J. Murphy, Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Jerry?
Are there any plans on the parking area? The pictures showed it to be fairly grassy. Is there any plans to hot top that or anything?
No.
Going to stay that way?
Grass parking.
Jeff, do you have any questions? No, you're good?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Larry. So, those are the 3 boards that have opined on this so far to date. Julie, I know we have received written comments, a lot of it, and I have asked Julie to compile them for me, and I am going to read into the record the names and addresses of, I'm not going to read all of them because They are many, but they'll all be part of the public record, and the board will get copies of all these letters, all the board members will get copies of everything, for your own, to have it for your own review. So, the board did receive, a signature, a community-focused art and education space, petition from, I think it was change.org. It had 192 signatures on it. It's read, the Byfield Hay Barn located at 1 Marsh Meadow Lane is a 200-year-old renovated barn, the heart of Newbury. The barn and the property that surround it are a pristine gem that celebrates the agricultural history of our town and the beauty of its natural richness. The residents of Marsh Meadow Lane are unified in the belief that such a treasure is meant to be shared in the community rather than hoarded and tucked away. The mission of this collective is to celebrate the amazing creative wealth our community has to offer and facilitate opportunities for our friends, neighbors, and other town residents to gather and to experience it. So I'm not going to go ahead and read this on, but it has some pictures here that similar to what we've seen tonight. And so this is a petition in favor of this proposed use, and it has 192 signed signatures with it. So we have also received letters of support from Erica and Todd Jacobson of 7 South Pond Street, E.J. Ouellette, 4 Silver Mine Road, Ryan Kelly, 24 School Street, Michael Updike, 29 Old Rowley Road, Keith Stromsky, 35 School Street, Mary Leary, 31 Green Tree Lane, William DeMayo, 12 Orchard Street, Donna Resnick, 105 Central Street, Frank Bertolino, 10 Maple Street, Matthew Connerton, sorry about that, 78 Hanover Street, Mackenzie Rayfelt, 25 Main Street, Heather Burrell, 35 School Street, Dave Miller, 40 Orchard Street, Kelsey Stromsky, 24 Withington Street, and Chris Valhos of 12 Johnson Lane. And those letters are all here. We have received non-resident letters of support from Dr. Yori Thomas, 25 High Street in Amesbury, Sanford Farrier, Christy Hutchinson, Daniel Johnson, Julia Sloan, Steve Sanderson of 40 Parker Street in Newburyport, Kimberly LaCroix, Michelle Chabot, Sarah George, Debbie Davis of 665 Purchase Street in Newburyport, Ariel Basher of Newburyport, Dan Fionti, 51 Cromwell Road in Andover, Gordon Prisbilia, I'm sure I hacked that up, my apologies, Kim Silverance, Carrie Bernard, Sarah Webb, Ashley Roy, Katie Banovic, Bert Snow, which is the Director of Outdoor Sculpture at Maudsley, Beth Randall, who's an actor, David Davies, Purchase Street, Newburyport, Alicia Castillo, Gwen Chabot, excuse me, Brian Days, owner and maker of Red Birch Designs, LLC, Jean Trim, 123 Bachelor Street, West Newbury, Diane Stillman, Cheryl Fisher, and Robert Watts of 126 Merrimack Street in Newburyport. We've also received letters of opposition. Lear Zambernardi, 20 Orchard Street, Helen Martosho, 24 Orchard Street, Andrew Samuels, 22 Orchard Street, Alyssa and Hugh Rice, 7R Austin Lane. We received numerous letters from them. David Maida of 61 Larkin Road, Andrea and Matt Rumpf of 21 Austin Lane, and Ryan and Amanda Small of 19 Austin Lane. The board also received today some questions from, once again, Helen Martosho of 24 Orchard Street. Pretty much the questions that have all been asked tonight that have somewhat been answered by the applicant, the attorney for the applicant, and will hopefully come out in the public hearing process. These are all part of the public record. They'll be on file at the town of Newbury, and the board will all receive copies of it. If you want paper copies, Julie can run these through the machine for you, or you can get electronic copies. So, now that that has been done, I'm going to ask if any members of the public are here tonight and would like to speak on this special permit application. Before I take public comment, I have to set some ground rules. I need each person to come up and speak in the microphone. You need to clearly state your name and address for the record. If you're in a butter, please identify yourself as such. And try to keep it short and simple. If somebody has already said what you wanted to say, please, unless you have something additional that the board needs to hear, please try to keep it as short and as sweet as possible. So, are there any public comment? Oh, and one more thing. We will, if you have any questions, I will take them to me, and then after this public comment session, we'll return them to whoever the questions are for. Mr. Williams in the back. Come on up.
Thank you for having this hearing. I'm Dale Williams, 12 Scotland Heights.
Hi, Dale.
First question would be a little more clarity on why Selectman Colby recused himself from the public hearing on this topic.
He had a conflict of interest from one of his business endeavors.
Okay, I only asked because the last time I was involved in a special permit process, it made it for this board to have a supermajority,
Correct.
which is unanimous.
Correct.
So, not knowing the specifics of his relationship, it makes it more difficult, I would think, for this board to render a good decision with lacking one member. Second question, are there any restrictions or suggestions by the applicant to limit use of this property to daylight hours only?
I have not heard that tonight, but actually, if you take a seat, we'll make
I
that
have one
note.
more question.
Oh, yeah.
You know, interwoven with the presentation is a lot of, you know, history on agriculture in Newbury and how it's going to be a theme of a part of this proposal. How much agriculture activity is happening now on that lot? Any?
Well, I believe we heard, I'll ask the, actually, I'm gonna,
I think you're gonna wait till the end.
yes,
So
yeah.
the idea is to hear all the public comment and then allow.
That's,
okay.
yeah,
address it.
that's a
Right.
good idea.
So those are my three questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Alicia,
You have another hand up.
Yeah.
can you read this just to make sure people realize how important it is for you to speak tonight to the proposal? Because this is an integral part of the special permit. So if you're thinking of just being quiet tonight, it's not the time to do it.
So, this is, what Selectman Walker just gave me is our, the criteria for us to give a special permit. This board needs a supermajority, which means all four of us, since Selectman Colby has recused himself. The applicant needs 4 yes votes that, after hearing all of the evidence brought to us, after doing our due diligence, site walks, reviewing plans, and all of that stuff, we have to find, we have findings. We have to find that the proposed use is not injurious, is in the best interest of the town, is not injurious or obnoxious to the neighboring properties, will satisfy a community need or convenience not otherwise being served, will not affect abutting in nearby properties by increasing traffic and on-street parking, and that nothing connected with the use, buildings, or structure, such as machinery, vehicles, materials, supplies, equipment, and waste materials, shall be stored between the street line and the front line of the structure or building, nor be visible from the street. So, after we determine that all the weight of all the evidence, We will go through this criteria list one at a time, and I will ask the board
Those questions.
those questions. Do we believe that it is in the best interest of the town? Why or why not? And we'll have, but that's at the very end, so we're at the beginning now. So is there anyone else here that has public comment? Come on up. Hi,
Hi,
name and address?
Leah Zambernardi. I live at 20 Orchard Street, and I'm an abutter to an abutter within 300 feet,
Okay, thank
which
you.
is one of the criteria. Is this close enough?
Yeah,
It's fine.
I think,
Okay. So if you come out of Marsh Meadow Lane onto Orchard Street and you take a left, I'm the third house down. From the back of our property, we can see and hear what's going activity on the property, which is fine. We've been here 8 or 9 years, and we like living there, and we like living near the farm. In terms of the proposal, I did not see any the submission from October 26th that was mentioned, so I don't know if this question has already been answered, but in the mid-October submittal, Attorney DeShane had listed a number of uses or clarified the uses. And so the sentence read kind of strange to me because it said, you know, we propose the following uses, including but not limited to. And the not limited to phrase is very concerning to me. I think there needs to be more clarification about what not limited to, are there limits on that? I have concerns about health, safety, and welfare. We haven't seen any points or information about parking and circulation within the site. It has to do with health and safety because if we're talking about large numbers of people with perhaps 200 or more cars parking in a field without a stable parking surface or established aisles, you know, what's the plan for people to get out at night, 100 or so cars, and especially if there's an emergency? Not to, and I should add, you know, the zoning bylaw does include standards for parking lot surfaces, aisle widths, parking spots, none of which I've seen. I just think in order to make a decision on the use, you know, that's a health, safety, welfare concern. That's one of the criteria. And then in talking about circulation, Orchard Street itself is a long winding road, as we all know. It's very sparsely lit. So if we're talking about after dark events with people coming from out of town, leaving late, that's an issue. I've had people hit our stone wall, you know, over the years a couple of times at night. And if we're talking about large numbers of people who aren't familiar with the area, it's a possibility. Well, it's likely. And then 2 more points. In terms of nuisance issues, I haven't heard much about the impact on the neighbors from the proponent. There were a number of letters submitted in support and in opposition. I know a number of them were submitted when we first, you know, heard of the application. And I just implore that the Jespersons, if you haven't gotten copies of the letters, which you can because it's a public record, that you look at them and consider them and respond as you feel is warranted. When I talk about nuisance, I'm talking about lighting. What's the lighting going to be like on that, at that barn? You know, Austin Lane neighbors and Orchard Street neighbors will be impacted. Noise, I know it is extremely difficult to regulate noise because you can't really have the enforcement officer on the property hearing the noise with the proper equipment to know if it's reaching a certain decibel level that violates the zoning bylaw. So it's really difficult to regulate noise, and sometimes it's done by limiting hours of operation. So maybe those hours where, you know, it would be more of a nuisance, you consider limiting certain events. And then last, I'll just close, you know, most of the property has Chapter 61 designation with the tax relief associated with that. So I just ask that the select board kind of look at that and whether, you know, this use is the tipping point where will they still have that status. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Come on up.
Sorry about my voice. I'm recovering from a cold for my kids, which is also kind of factors into this conversation as a bigger point of conversation as well. So name Zach Raymond, 17 Austin Lane, a butter directly into the backyard, essentially my backyard looking right at the barn. So I first want to start out by saying kind of typically you meet and speak with the neighbors to discuss a big impact item such as this. It seems like a lot of energy and effort has occurred meeting with individuals from the police, fire, and safety inspectors, gaining support from 192 names that we don't know are actual residents or exactly. So that should be stricken from the record essentially because we don't know the support, where it's coming from, and frankly, it's not their property, so why would they care? And those efforts essentially kind of start to mount up, yet the one thing that kind of brings me back to this is that at no point has any of the neighbors in around the areas which the names are coming up in reading off of opposition have been contacted one-to-one in the spirit of transparency. At no point have any contact to talk to us about the impact, long-term impact from this proposal. Not a one, but it seems to be okay to have a lot of energy and effort around all these other activities except for the people directly affected. So part of my notes here that I also have to the 4 points that Jeff had listed, passed over, and that you had read. First one being that the building is for the best interest of the town. There are some serious concerns based upon the generalities presented in this proposal of its intent of use at times, including the noise, alcohol consumption, which was tiptoed around from a direct response, daytime versus nighttime. There are kids and toddlers going right up against that stone wall, so who's policing that from having all of these strangers coming on site if parking is right there against that stone wall? Serious safety concerns, especially at night. Disruptions to the nature and conservation of it all, where as people who are coming in, moving into the town, residents, under the premise that you're going onto a residential plot of land, that you want that peace and privacy. That is going to be compromised, knowing that cars with headlights are coming in, shining directly into your backyard, parking right up against your stone wall, or even having the kind of peaceful nature of going out in the backyard, looking up into the stars at night with a nice kind of fire pit, enjoying your family and your time with your family, not having 20 yards away groups of people right there. So it kind of compromises that aspect as well. Also, in terms of the obnoxiousness, that we don't know what it's going to entail long term. These types of intentions, while all well and good, in small frequencies, there could be much more adverse effects if these frequencies just keep growing and growing and growing. Special permits added on top of special permits for one-day uses and so forth. So there's a lot of long-term implications from an obnoxiousness standpoint that just remain unclear. Also, if there's a community need, yes, I'm not opposed to anything art-related. I come from a family of artists myself, but I think not a lot of long-term thought has been around, you know, the intent of the location in and of itself. If there's a need for art, why couldn't another location have been presented? Not right up against the homes of families, maybe farther down on a parcel of land, tucked farther back, or at least discuss to us where these types of opportunities are going to take place. One of my neighbors also proposed, why not the library? You can have art classes at the library. They're open as a public forum. So it seems like it's really just for that location for gain. And then also, too, affecting abutting and nearby properties. A lot of those points that I just mentioned do affect the abutting properties and those neighbors. So I think overall, I think it's a very dangerous precedent to be setting, saying that this special permit can go into effect in a residential neighborhood with so many close abutting homes, based upon the lack of ability to police the noise, the timing of shows, which seems to be circumnavigated here for good reason. Also, the privacy, alcohol consumption, what constitutes the term art, which can be loosely affiliated to a lot of different means. And then one last final point from a historic preservation society standpoint and the restrictions therein. Wouldn't there be kind of restrictions against insulating a building such as that from a noise standpoint if it's a historically preserved building? I kind of want to throw that out there because I do want to know myself, because that's a major facelift to that building to actually insulate it, soundproof it, and make sure that it's sustainable for acoustics inside and a larger group's audible levels inside, because I can turn around and see my neighbors and say hello to any one of them across the street or across the entire neighborhood in the middle of the night, and it's clear as day. You can hear a pin drop. And all my neighbors are here to also put forth that opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? Come on up, Lori.
Just lost my notes. Laurie Collins, 15 Austin Lane, direct abutter. Amongst the founding fathers of Austin Lane, we've been there for 27 years. So, we weren't tacitly opposed to this project as it originally showed up as an opportunity for artists to exhibit, but the scope of usage has grown so extraordinarily and is really not defined. And yes, that was me. I said, you can use the Newburytown Library for art exhibits, and you can get a special permit so you can have beer and wine for your reception, and then you can leave that artwork up for a great deal of time so other people get to see it. But that's a whole nother thing. When we moved there, I thought, well, we're beside a horse farm with a long lease, we'll probably smell manure, and that's true. And we're beside the wildlife management area, and we'll probably see deer and coyotes, right? That is true. Did I envision the wedding singer? Absolutely not. It's a very quiet
I'm gonna just
neighborhood.
stop 1 second. There's
Yeah.
gonna be no weddings here.
Okay.
It's not allowed.
All right,
That
but
will not
I'm
happen.
music.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you should approve this, who will oversee compliance? I worked for this town for 11 years. Budgets are not very healthy. If you say no open flames, who will make sure there's no open flames? If you say only so many cars can park, who'll make sure only so many cars are parked there? If you say only so many people can be in that building, who's going to be there to make sure that only so many people are in that building, so you don't have the neighborhood all with Gladys Kravitz over there counting who's going in and out? Let me see. So, and my last thing I would like to say is a much bigger issue. Having lived in this town for as long as I have, it's precedent setting to do this. This town has voted against a Dunkin' Donuts on 95, and a shopping plaza on Route 1, and those are industrial, commercial zoned areas of this town. We're talking about agricultural, residential. We're not on Route 1, we're not on 95. Orchard Street is really not built for the kind of traffic we're envisioning at this point. But I'm sorry, I just got here now. As my husband says, work gets in the way of everything. I don't know how much you've talked about the traffic issue, but you know, there are businesses in this town, but I really think, should you approve this, that the next time somebody comes to town and wants to put in a shopping plaza or a Dunkin' Donuts in a properly zoned area, that it would be really difficult for you to say, oh, no, we don't allow for that here, if there is this usage in the middle of an agricultural residential neighborhood. Thank you all. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Lori. Come on up.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ryan Small. I'm 19 Austin Lane. I'm a direct abutter. I'm going to save probably most of what I wrote, as my neighbors basically summed a lot of it up.
Okay,
I
thank
would
you.
like to say the pictures that were shown earlier, if there were any other angles of that barn, my house would have been front and center. I have one tree that has no more leaves on it currently, and I can see the barn every day. It's not a bad thing to look at, but it's right there. I would guess 150 yards from my back door. And as Zach and my other neighbors spoke up, you can hear a pin drop. I walk my dog most nights. I can hear people cleaning dishes, turning on their sink from 5 houses down the street. So, you know, I think the sound is a big issue for me. I wrote a lot about the wedding, so I'll skip out on that, but, you know, I would agree with my same sentiments about my sound concern if there's going to be a loud 100-person gathering, whether it's 4 or 8 times a year or whatever that was. And then additionally, we just want more clarity on how frequent these events would be, what types of cutoff times there would be, just so if things were to get out of hand, I could call and say, you know, the agreement is this time and it went over this time. Things like that. So if you guys do go out and do a site visit, just please take note of the homes. They're very close, and like I said, mine's right there. It's as close as it gets. So thank you for your time and for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Come on up.
Hello. Thank you for having us tonight. My name is Alyssa Rice. You've heard from me.
Yes.
7R Austin Lane. I don't want to repeat what many of my neighbors had said. I do want to touch on what Zach had said, is that the Jespersons have come out online saying the neighbors support it, the neighbors support it. And I agree with Zach. As a neighbor, not once have they come to anyone on Austin Lane or Orchard Street and discussed this proposal. We found out about it through public comment in the butters notice. You know, when Mr. Jesperson, Damon, first came in August, under the commercial entertainment, it was the farm needs to produce revenue, and I understand that. But it almost seems that what was presented tonight was a contradiction, that low or no cost events that will cover expenses. So I do question how these endeavors are going to, you know, generate revenue for the farm. The application as stands, I think we've all noted, is perhaps purposely ambiguous. There are no hours listed. Austin Lane, I think, and I apologize, I forget the attorney's name, has said buffers of woods. There is not buffers from woods. I am not a direct abutter. I can see it from my house. You know, when, as Ryan indicated, if you stand at one angle of the barn that was not shown in the pictures, Austin Lane, Clearance Center. So if you're going to have nighttime activities, there's going to be light. And I believe one of the special permit consideration was views from the road, was it? Or I apologize, I'm paraphrasing here. If they're setting up lights for nighttime event, that is a disruption on Austin Lane because there is no buffer. So I implore you, however you may vote, you need to put some regulations into this approval if granted. Hours need to be clearly defined, knowing that any nighttime events, be it with noise or with lights, will impact Austin Lane and the Orchard Street neighbors that don't have woods and forest. And, I implore you, Mr. Walker, and the rest of the board, take time and actually walk the parcel, and then you can see what we're speaking about. Sorry. Night events, 192 signatures, no buffer. And correct me if I'm wrong, when this entire subdivision was approved, wasn't it approved with the understanding that it's a private road with no access to the public?
So,
Town council?
thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, and we wouldn't typically get into this, but a private road doesn't mean no access to the public. It means that people who abut the road own the road, and it's not a public way.
Okay, because there's no sidewalks. I mean, if you're gonna have a large number of people there, there's no sidewalks. There's no lighting. There's no lighting on Austin Lane, and there's minimal lighting on Orchard Street. So I think that poses an impact to the public. I think that was it. I do want to, you did mention a lot of support. Once again, the 192 signatures from change.org, we're not all town people. We're not, so I think that does need to get stricken from the record. It was a public, letter of support, and so I think someone that lives not in the town should have no bearing on this decision. I think I touched on everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other, hold on, hold that thought.
Yep.
Any other comments from the public? Come on up. Write it down before you forget.
I got it.
Hi, I'm Helen Martaccio from 24 Orchard Street.
Hi.
I mean, I didn't think I was going to be able to make it this evening, but I was able to get here. I just, obviously, for the sake of not repeating a lot of what my neighbors have said, I am a direct abutter of 1 Marshall Meadow Lane. And one of my real major concerns is the traffic. I know it's somewhat been downplayed, thinking that we're only, events, maybe 5 people at a time, maybe once a week. Again, there's no definition for how often and in the frequency of this. And I feel the farm is already supporting 4 shows a year, which again, doesn't cause an issue, but they also must have lessons during the day. So, I mean, what kind of coordination is going to be done with Evenstride to make sure that there is an overlap and that's, increasing traffic? I've lived there for 31 plus years now. I walk on Orchard Street, Maple Road, Middle Road all the time. And I have to tell you, the traffic is frightening. And now having people come into the neighborhood who aren't familiar with the road and how, and just in terms of the fact that there are walkers, joggers, cyclists, it's and then all the curves, I just think it's really very dangerous for the people who live in the area. And, as my neighbor said, on occasion she's had a wall hit. I mean, we've had, different occasions where, other people run into things, but I mean, it happens. It's a dark road. So, again, from my background in terms of what I do for work, when I first saw the initial letter and even the update from the Justice lawyers, my pause is that it's an open, it's just open-ended. And I feel as though in the work that I do, I need to define a project. I need to say what it is. I need to understand I do the gap analysis on it, what my requirements are going to be, and and then at that point, the way it's written now, anything else as we think of, well, that's change. That's a scope change. And in my world, you don't just get to do it. You have to go back and you have to ask permission for it. You have to ask and define what that is. And then maybe that's something that can be addressed and approved or whatever. But that's just my concern with how the application is written right now. And I know you said a lot of my questions were answered. I'll just page 3 real quick. So yeah, traffic. I guess also too, I know there's this business of commercial, entertainment, indoor-outdoor activities. And at what point are some of the activities listed, can they be defined as entertainment and/or commercial? And it's just, I mean, I know we don't have to answer now, but for me, I look at it and I think art and craft shop. I don't know, I think there's, you know, I guess I could see that going either way. Also, you know, in terms of, you know, I know that there's not going to be any stress on, you know, public water, but, you know, again, how is, for instance, I think at one point on the map, when I had seen somewhere that there is supposed to be proposed, I think, 10,000 gallon fire cisterns, and I don't know that they're there. I mean, but is that something that is going to need to be there? And then how are they getting filled? How are they getting maintained? Because right now, again, I could be wrong, but there's only one hydrant at the corner of Orchard and
I think that's
Marsh Meadow.
They reuse the subdivision plan, and so those are the underlying subdivision plan, but not on the proposed plan. So that was part of their original subdivision approval, so that should be corrected by the applicant.
So
They're
when
not
we-
proposing a 10,000 gallon cistern.
So when we see the new plant, the new map, the new plot plans, we're not going to see that, those marked in there. Okay, I'm just curious.
No, thank you for asking.
So anyway, so again, there's only one hydrant. I believe there's only one hydrant. There's a hydrant that, it's on Marsh Meadow Lane, it's on, like the corner, like, it's next to my property. It's not a town. Well, I'm not sure what it is. It was there when I moved in. It was overgrown, and in August, all of a sudden, it was miraculously, it was cleared out. So I don't know that I've seen it used. Once in a while, what would happen is the fire department would come down, and you would hook up hoses, and they would basically run the water into the pond that's part of the Jesperson of my property. So, and I haven't seen that done in over 10 years. So I guess, you know, again, just in terms of understanding what the protection is there, heaven forbid in the case of fire, to protect the families there. And then also with some of the events, you know, again, Laura talked about, you know, how, you know, maybe 5 people. Well, we're talking about, well, how are we going to get those people and advertise for it? Facebook. How, you know, I think 5 people is like, I'm not really sure how that is considered a reasonable thought as to what would be expected to people who would attend an art class, exercise class, what have you, because Facebook, being far-reaching, it's, I mean, I just think the estimates for the volume of people that could end up coming onto the property, I think they're being underestimated, if that's just how it's going to be done.
Thank you. Is
Thank
that
you.
it?
For now, I think so.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Come on up.
Hi, Jim Breen, 18 Austin, and I am an abutter.
Hi.
I have to respectfully disagree with council when he said that the area is a vast area. I mean, to give you guys some perspective, if a horse whinnies at even stride, I can hear it. I'm very familiar with the barn. I watched it be constructed out my bedroom window. And more importantly, I heard it being constructed. And part of that construction was during the windows, so that would be with the windows closed. There's not a neighbor here that doesn't hear the locomotives at the Newburyport train station idling in the morning, because sound carries. You know, and I live across the street from Austin. I'm not actually on the border with the property, so sound is a definite concern for me personally. The other thing too is the traffic impact. I'm a runner and a cyclist. I've been using these roads for 40 years, 25 of them as a resident of Austin Lane. I've had several close calls, some of them in that particular area. That road is so narrow, you gotta go all the way back to Central Street or Scotland Road before you start getting breakdown lanes. You cannot, there was a road race, I forget how many years back, you can't have 2 cars pass and have a pedestrian or a cyclist. I've had some close calls myself. That's a big concern because there's a lot of children in the area, a lot of people that use those roads. And my last thing, Selectman Packer mentioned it earlier, the definition of commerce is the providing goods or services for compensation. So, I mean, I suppose it's up to you folks to decide whether that is, how that applies to this application. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that has something new that we haven't heard yet? We've got traffic, we've got,
One more, Alicia.
yeah, come on up.
Excuse me, my name is Gail Meserve, and I live at 8 Maple Street in Byfield. I was involved with Austin Fields.
Excuse me, ma'am, why don't you
I just
direct
really
it
wanted
to
to
me?
address them to
Yeah,
to
well,
know.
you're
I felt-
directing to me.
But they don't know who I am, so. Anyway, I just wanted you to know that I have lived out there for a long time. We've owned a lot of property out there, was my great-grandfather's. So I'm quite concerned with the fact that, I believe, I mean, I want the board and the people to know that the horse farm that's there, I believe that it's a rented facility to Alana and Scott Laffey, and they have been a great, just very, I can't even talk, excuse me. They've done a really good job, I'll just say, with the equestrian industry and what they do and what they've contributed. There can be, I mean, I've been at shows down there, and there can be anywhere from 30 horses boarded. I don't know how many stalls they have now there, but they have horses. She has a very large lesson program. So there's a lot of people that come and go just for the lesson program, never mind the people that board their horses there. We really haven't talked about that. And it is a big thing in our community and out of our community because what they do with the horse industry and the lesson program that they have for young kids. So they've done a great job there. The concern is that, you know, I feel for the people from Austin Fields because we never saw that coming. I grew up and went to Dan Brown's farm as a kid. The barn, it's nice if they could redo that. It doesn't look like what I remember, but obviously that's new and this was old. It's a lovely piece of property. They're lucky to have it, you know, and they've kept it that way. I look at it as that, you know, their license, you know, Alana has a license to run that business there. Then the subdivision came, and the road was called Lucy Lane, and it was renamed, but it was named after Dan Brown's wife. So, you know, there's a lot of history there, but it's also come like in stages for them to get to this point that they've built this barn over, which, you know, it does resemble it. It's very different, you know, from what I remember. But, you know, it's been in stages that they've got these approvals. So if you had you have a agricultural because you're doing farm, and then you bring in a subdivision and you put houses in, and now we're going to come back and we're going to put in a barn and we're going to put in these activities that I think it's all great. I'm not against any of that at all. What I'm concerned about, again, is the traffic flow there. Being that I have to go through my own approvals and help the builder that had bought the property from my family, I had to do a traffic study. You're talking, we had 26 acres there, and we're putting in 15 homes. That's concerning to me to hear how many people might be coming and going on that road, considering, that what I have to go through, you know, with a 15-lot subdivision. I don't know where this is coming from, sorry. But I would hope that they would have to do something like that, because when you talk 100 people, I think about what people come when they come with the horse trailers and the kids that are up there. There's a lot of children that go there. And I worry about thinking what that's going to look like. It's like, it's invisible, really. We can't even tell what it is. I just know what we endure with the horse trailers pulling in and out and doing that. And if that business is going to continue down there, that they lease the barn and they're going to keep going, I hope. But to see that and have another facet in front of it, I wish it was behind it or something. But, you know, so it's really kind of, is some of the parking going to be on the horse property? You know, like, how's that going to play into it? You know, they have grazing paddocks and paddocks for turnout and what have you. Being in the horse industry myself, it was concerning.
Okay.
So, but traffic is a big deal, and people walking out there
We've
all
heard
the
that,
time.
traffic
So,
and
yeah.
walking.
So, but a traffic study would be something that I would think we would have to think about.
Okay.
For safety. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else that has something that we have not heard yet?
Good evening.
Hi.
Scott Lebanon, 66 Central Street, not a butter. And if we're talking about traffic, you know, when you leave that facility, you have a choice to turn left or turn right. So everyone's been talking about the local impact of traffic. The real issue is when you hit Central Street, because that's your main egress to 95. Central Street, in the intersection of Central Street, where the house 66 Central is very dangerous. There have been a lot of accidents. We've had cars hit my neighbor's house. We've had cars spin out onto our yard. So my bigger concern is when you talk about doing a traffic study, you'd consider the distal effects where these people are going to be coming and going from. And I would say that Central Street at Orchard Street is just going to get more dangerous.
Thank you. Anyone else that we haven't heard yet? Sir, you had your hand up. Did you want to come on up?
Thank you, Ms. Greco. Matthew Connerton, 78 Hanover Street. I am here as a former participant in last year's art and craft fair at the barn. I live in Newbury, I work in Newbury, and I use wood to make wooden items. I get quite a bit of my wood from Damon Jesperson, who mills wood. And he made me aware that this event was taking place and offered me a spot at a table. It was wonderful as an event. I'm aware that there were traffic issues, but I'll tell you, as a vendor indoors, it was extremely well organized with a very careful control of how many individuals were allowed in the building at any given time. There was a line down the entryway to the barn. It was all mask on. Everybody behaved themselves. It went extraordinarily well, both offloading to set up and then breaking down to go away. Zero issues. I've participated in events like this all over the country. This is one of the best organized events from an inside point of view that I've ever been to, bar none. I'm looking forward, if this proposal meets with your approval, of potentially having a traditional Japanese woodworking seminar in the barn and on the property. There's a group that I'm involved with called Kezurokai USA that would welcome an East Coast venue like this. We'd be talking about 50 people. I'm familiar with the property. I visit it often. I'm sure once you review the property yourselves and walk it and see the potential parking areas that you'll be quite satisfied that there's an adequate area, non-paved, so no more impact of road building or any other stuff, at least for daytime activity. And I can certainly speak from a business point of view of doing business with Damon many times and being a friend for many years. He's a good guy, and he really is trying to comply in every way possible. There's no intent to hide anything. He's trying to be as transparent as possible. And that's all I got. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? After him, then you.
Thank you. Adam McHale, 8 Austin Lane. I just have a question. Are concerts considered art? And would that be part of the events? And again, being part of this, Mr. Jesperson has not come to any of us at Austin Lane. I do know his dogs well, but I pick up after them. But I think we're all for the arts. I think there's just so vagueness in this, where if we could know events, times, it would have been a little bit easier for us in the neighborhood. But again, just wanted to know if music is considered art.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll get it down. Mr. DeMayo?
Bill DeMayo, 12 Orchard Street. I'm not in a butter. I've lived at 12 Orchard Street for 44 years. I was prepared for something else tonight, okay, because I was thinking I'd hear more about noise than I did. Now, I'm sensitive to what the abutters in Austin Lane spoke about. I can sympathize with some of their concerns of what might happen in the future. You know, in 44 years, I've heard, and during pheasant seasons, the shotguns go off at Martin Burns. but I like living near Martin Burns. Doesn't bother me all that much, okay? My kids went to Triton. For years, I heard the marching band practice. Now, Triton's not that close to my house on Orchard Street, okay? I've listened to the cheering on the football games at Triton on Saturdays, and that's happened fairly frequently. Tonight, I was thinking I was going to hear about, hey, is this going to be like the Byfield Community Arts Center? We're going to have 7 concerts. We're going to have people come in and play jazz music Saturday night at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. And guess what? There's no parking there at all. They recommend, their website, BCAC recommends, park at the post office, park at the library, park on federal property, park on town property. There is no parking for that event, okay, but somehow it's tolerated. And I've never heard anyone from that commercial center in Byfield complain about the noise and the alcohol that's being sold at the Byfield Community Arts Center. So what I heard tonight was a very mild, in comparison, presentation of what might happen at this site, Jesperson's Barn. Okay, right now, one of the loudest noises in my neighborhood is my rooster. Okay, and that's one reason why I live there. Okay, I never hear anything from the horse barn, and I don't live on Austin Lane. That's probably why I don't. But and I admit, traffic on Orchard Street is very testy. The night of November 5th, there was a private party on Orchard Street, and there were cars double parked on each side of Orchard Street, all the way down to the Great Meadow Road access road. I don't know if it registered 9 or 10 on the Richter scale. I don't know if the police department was called there because it was a horrendous traffic jam blocking egress for fire engines, but I think it was a non-event. And that happened once a year. So, I mean, can we tolerate something for maybe 4 or 5 times a year if there's an inconvenience? I'm just throwing it out there. I've known the Jesperson family for years. They're very respectful people. I'm listening to the Austin Road people saying no one spoke, Jespersons didn't speak to us directly, and that's for them to answer, okay? But I think they're very conscientious people, the Jesperson family, and I think that if something comes to their attention that needs to be fixed, they're gonna fix it. I'm confident about that. That's essentially what I want to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay. Seeing none. All right. I have a list of questions that I've heard tonight.
Alicia, can I
Oh, you had a comment.
qualify
Yes.
something? I would like everyone in the room to know that this is one of our key roadmaps. One of the reasons that you didn't see us on a sidewalk or see us walking in Austin Lane is because this thing got fouled up at the first time it was presented because it came in as something it now isn't. So, trust me, before I'm going anywhere near approving or disapproving, at least I'm gonna have to have a sidewalk. And then I'll be walking Austin Lane and listening to anyone that wants to speak to us. That's what we have to do as part of the process. But we're not gonna run down there before anything happens, because we don't know what is happening. But we'll be there, I promise you.
So I'm going to ask Attorney Duchesne, have you, after hearing anything, all this public comment tonight, is there anything that you would like to respond to?
Madam Chair, I'm certainly not going to take the time to answer all of the questions tonight. In fact, I did hear everything that was said, and it is clear to me that we do have our work cut out for us in providing both the neighbors and this board a more well-defined understanding of the specific programs, hours and expected attendance, scheduling to the extent we can. Also, it's without question that we would like an opportunity to put together a more formal parking plan to meet with your planning board, to present that to them so that they can then provide comments to this board. Certainly would welcome a site visit from this board prior to our next, getting together again. I cannot provide an answer as to why my clients didn't meet with the neighbors prior to my involvement. Although it is certainly a conversation I will have with them, and perhaps I think if we push this out for a couple of meetings, we do the parking plan, we meet with the planning board, we define activities, I will certainly suggest to my client that perhaps we want to have a neighborhood meeting to discuss their questions and their concerns prior to coming back to you. Maybe we need to take a step back and do this a little more detailed, and I recognize that. I do have to take exception to one statement that said that I tippy-toed or I avoided the question of alcohol. I didn't discuss alcohol at all. I'm not asking for a permit to allow alcohol. I'm not suggesting there would or would not be alcohol. It's got nothing to do with my being here today, and I'm certainly not suggesting otherwise. The alcohol question is unrelated to this application and certainly not part of what I was to present, and that wasn't avoided or tiptoed around. We're not asking for approval to serve alcohol. I also don't think I've done a very good job of explaining the expected intensity of use here. We're talking about, having the barn filled to capacity and whether it would be safe from a fire perspective. With the exception of the events that we've discussed, the possible events, the outdoor events, in talking with my clients, everything they're thinking about in terms of classes or recreational activities or group meetings or group activities, they're not 50, 100, 200 people. They're classroom-size things. And so, maybe it was my error in saying, 5 to 20 people, or, that's the kind of thing you get when you advertise a mushroom hunt or a nature walk or something like that. I mean, it would be nice if we had more people, but we're not proposing large-scale events on a weekly, regular, annual basis at all. But again, my job will be to define for you and the neighbors a more specific definition of what, when, how, where. Hadn't really thought about the night versus day kinds of things, although I've suspected that vast majority of things would be during the daylight. And again, only during the summer and fall, early, late spring, early fall kinds of things. So I'd like an opportunity to continue this meeting, probably not for 2 weeks, but perhaps a good month, so we can get the traffic parking plan done. We can get it to your planning board. We can meet with your planning board, give them their information. That'll also give me time to put together a far more detailed schedule of expected events. Perhaps we can come up with a definitive listing that, I said that this is everything we've talked about, and, something new may come up down the road, and that's true. And I guess if something new comes up, then we could always come in and ask whether that new activity would be part of a permit if one was granted. But I have some homework to do, and I will get the board that stuff. I'd ask for a continuance for a month, and I'd also like to know how we schedule a visit with the board, and I will talk to my client about perhaps meeting with neighbors between now and then so that we can work through some of these issues. I still wholeheartedly feel this is a very beneficial opportunity for the town. I think it is directly in keeping with your master plan. But we need to do it in a way that makes you comfortable that you can condition it and control it so that the fears and concerns of the neighbors can be addressed. And I know we can get there. So I'd like an opportunity to do that.
Thank you. Does anybody on the board have any questions of Attorney Duchesne?
I think that we ought to have a site plan, a site walk sooner than not, before it gets really cold and get everyone out there.
Okay.
So if you
Yeah,
can
right.
set that up with the Jespersons, I think that would be,
Yeah.
you
We'll have a site
really
walk.
need to go.
So that, yeah, that's not something you have to schedule here, because it's an exemption under the open meeting law, so that can be scheduled between Julie and.
Perfect, good.
Board,
Good.
yeah.
Perfect.
Right.
So before we go on, though, I kind of want to talk to the board about whether or not we feel as if what we've heard tonight falls under the indoor-outdoor recreation activities. Before we ask the applicant to go ahead and spend all this money on making a site, doing the parking, doing another site plan, I think it's only fair to the applicant, to the neighbors, and quite frankly, to us. I think we need to have this conversation tonight. So, in order to fall under the recreational use as set forth in our bylaw, it's indoor and outdoor recreation areas and facilities, including but not limited to playgrounds, health and fitness centers, miniature golf, golf driving range, batting cage, tennis courts, skating rink, boating, fishing, and swimming. That's how our bylaw defines indoor and outdoor recreational areas. Now, we heard tonight from the applicant a number of things that they would like to do. I heard mushroom hunts. Can you put that slide back up, Julie?
Trail.
Yeah, walk through trails. Nope, go back again. Here we go. Proposed uses. So training and educational classes, theater programs to provide acting lessons, music lessons. This is all under indoor. Rehearsal space, art classes and studios, space for artisans, as well as a venue to exhibit their arts and crafts. Health and welfare programs providing yoga and fitness centers, nutritional programs, and wellness classes and seminars. That's indoor. For outdoor, they have farming and agricultural training and educational classes, including public access to the farm, forestry management classes, and animal husbandry classes. Art classes in outdoor areas for use by artisans, as well as venues to exhibit their art and crafts. Outdoor recreational programs, including yoga and fitness classes, trail development and maintenance programs, organized nature walks year-round throughout the farm and forested areas, mushroom hunts, sculpture walks, bird watching classes and opportunities, and possibly public access to trail networks on the farm. I think we need some clarification on that. So I guess I'm gonna take a walk around the board and see how you feel. Do you feel as if that qualifies under recreational activities? Jerry, you wanna go first?
From what you read, no, it doesn't, because they're not talking about putting in a playground. To me, a fitness center means you have athletic equipment that stays there permanently. I don't think they're talking about having, rowing machines there. They're not talking miniature golf, golf driving range, batting cages, tennis courts, skating rinks, boating, fishing, and swimming. So I don't see how, from what you read earlier, Madam Chair, this fits.
Okay. Dana, what do you think?
I have to agree with what you just said.
Jeff?
I just, to add to that, I'd have to do a little more research on exactly what fits into these categories and what doesn't. That's,
Well,
to be honest.
before you speak, can I speak for a minute?
Yeah.
When I was thinking, many years ago, when my kids were young, the town of Newbury had recreational programming at Newbury Elementary School, and we had a small little rec department. And do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you sent your kids to the rec program, and it was classes, and it was it was educational, but it was rec. So I kind of see how that would fit. That's all I wanted to say. Go ahead, Jeff, what were you thinking?
I mean, if you look with the stipulative definition at the playgrounds, health and fitness centers, miniature golf, driving range, on and on and on, tennis courts, skating rink, all that stuff, boating and fishing, a stipulative definition for me is very hard to say that that falls under that criteria of indoor-outdoor use. And I'm gonna have to turn to Lisa, our attorney Mead, and ask her what in hell president does but not limited to have.
Well, right, the whole definition says including but not limited to,
I mean,
and then
that's-
and then it provides definitions. And so this is where it's discretionary,
It's
right?
bizarre.
This is where it's discretionary. So we're in the middle of the zoning rewrite, so maybe we'll fix that. But it's discretionary, and so the question is, the including but not limited to. So I think an obvious one, is to look at health and welfare programs, providing yoga, fitness classes, nutritional programs. Those seem like recreational programs from my point of view. And then the chair just pointed out what your rec program was. And so maybe what the board does is the applicant has just heard your 4 comments, right? Jerry has some questions. You have some Dana has some questions, and then it seems like the two of you are kind of in the middle on those. So maybe the choice is for the applicant not to have you make a determination, but to convince you or better define what it is that they're doing, which would potentially fall under that use. And then they can be the ones to decide whether or not they spend the money to present a site plan and, present a use that falls under the indoor-outdoor recreation use, including but not limited to, and give you examples, right? Where are other similar examples in Newbury or similar communities around that would fall under those 2 use categories that aren't the very traditional miniature golf, swimming, right? We all know that, but the including limited to is because recreation is, mountaineering is recreation, right? So that's not listed there, for example. But you would need to decide. So maybe some of these things aren't indoor-outdoor recreational. And so if you were to decide to issue a permit, those wouldn't be things that would be in it, right? But maybe some of the other stuff would be because it's more clearly indoor-outdoor recreational.
I guess what I'm asking in a way, and correct me, to me, the intention of this portion of the bylaw reads like almost Jerry said, very hardscape, like fitness center, miniature golf, driving range. Now, I take away from that a little bit, and that's why I was a little concerned, and I'm not saying anything, Peter, but not limited to meaning, well, maybe it's a running racetrack's okay. I mean, I didn't take away a lot of unesoteric uses, like maybe cross-country skiing, which it does relate to fitness, and as long as not limited to doesn't mean like hard facilities, then I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and I think that's Peter's interpretation is that it's not limited to that. That it's you have to stay within what the definition of recreation is, indoor, outdoor, obviously, and then make a determination as a special permit granting authority whether what's being presented does fall within those categories.
I got you.
So one thing I'd like to ask the applicant is that you put a comment up here, including 2 things. There's possibly public access to the trail network on the farm. What does that look like? Possibly public access to the trail. Thanks, Marshall.
When we did the open space,
Are you leaving? I'm just getting some air. Oh, I just wanted to thank you guys for speaking. I appreciate it so much.
I'm sorry.
okay, so when we looked at this as the open space, and we talked to members of the planning board at that time, we said, you know, this is a great venue possibly in the future. And we were looking, not in my lifetime, but my kid's lifetime, of what, and we had struggled with this in the town of Newbury, what is going to bring people to Newbury? What is going to be exciting to Newbury? And some of the things that we looked at in other places and in other venues were some outdoor sculpture parks. We said, what about if we bring sculpture to Newbury and take some of the trails through the woods and put sculpture in there and bring people to this town for reasons of art, outdoors, because, and this was back years and years ago when we had an economic development subcommittee, and we said, what is going to bring people to Newbury? And we didn't have infrastructure, we still don't. But it is things that have to do with nature. You know, bird watching is, you know, this is one of the greatest areas around.
Right.
Art is one of the things that does not require infrastructure. Open space and trails were part of that. And so part of this whole thing, part of the preservation, part of the fact that we said, you know, it was possible under our agreement to let the barn fall down and not spend any money on it. But we decided, no, that's not where we want to be in Newbury. We want to be a contributing part of the town, and part of the town that you can be proud of. And so that's where we have been going with this. And bringing that kind of holistic look at this piece of property is really where we've been for over 30 years. And so we may have struck a wrong note, okay? And we may have angered some people who are abutters, okay? But in the last analysis, what we're trying to do is strengthen and make Newbury a better town for all of us. And we've been following that track for a long time.
Well, thank you. So you envision these trails to be open to the public and have people, you know, set hours or something. Let's just say you have artists and residents come and, you know, I think of that monster park outside of Rome. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
So, you know, you can walk through and see all the sculpture and then might be permanent, or it might not be permanent, and then it comes down and then it comes back, but you have different exhibits. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
That's what I was thinking. You know, we have some pieces of sculpture out there right now. We had looked at developing the trails in the back. We had talked to the planning board years and years ago, and they said, that sounds like it would be an allowed use for this, and probably a good use for that property. And so that's what we looked at. And at one point, and Jeff was the fellow who brought it up, so he'll remember, he said, well, we'd like to have public access to the land. And I said,
For hunting, remember?
yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And so, but public access for this land for some other uses, for some other things, for enrichment, is really, you know, we preserved it for a reason. And the reason is not just to be woods. The reason is that we can bring things to Newbury that otherwise would not exist. And the arts is a big part of that. And that was where we had been going. And looking at this property, what is the long-term plan for a property like this when we're gone, when the Laffies are gone, when the horses are gone? What do you do with it? What do you do with something where you could have a facility that could be a center for artistic activity? And these are the possibilities that we've been looking at for a long, long time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, I think,
But you never got an answer out of us on this.
no, we're still talking about that. The other thing that I question is the, maybe Marshall has to come back up here again, but it says art classes and studio space for artisans, as well as a venue to exhibit their arts and crafts. So I know you had that craft show last December, and, how many people did you have there, Evan, do you remember?
I think we had about 800 people come through.
Okay, 800.
And were we 3 hours open? 4 hours open.
Yeah. So. Okay, so I think the board needs to understand what kind of an event that was, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was, a room, which was the barn, and the artisans showed up, and they had a stall, so to speak, where they would sell their wares. They could only sell what they brought, or they could take orders for other things. And it was timed, I think, right after Thanksgiving, the weekend after Thanksgiving.
Between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
And Christmas, so that, to help the community. The community's artisans sell their wares for Christmas presents. But it was closed at dark, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, before dark, way before dark.
So, is that what you envision occurring a couple of 3-4 times a year? That type of an event? Why don't you come up? Say who you are.
Evan Jesperson, Waldo Evan Jesperson.
What's your address?
I know. 7 Marsh Meadow. I've only lived there for 3 or 4 years now. So, a butter?
No, it's okay.
So yeah, so thank you all for bearing with the process, because we're trying to figure out what we can do with the space, because it's beautiful and we want to share it. And this was one of our first ideas, and it went really well as far as turnout. And we've been trying to think, well, what else can we do to share this space? But right now we're excited about, well, that went well. Let's try to do that once or twice a year, where we bring in local artists, have them sell their wares. Clearly, it was just the 4 of us running it, which was not nearly enough as far as we needed 4 to 10 people dealing with parking, which is, we didn't charge money for the first time. We realized, we need to charge at least enough money to pay the people to help us do the parking kind of thing. So it's, whether or not there's actually money that ends up going to the farm, some of the money is just to facilitate the events happening. And if we end up with money on top of that, great, then we can pay towards plowing and towards other things that take care of the property. But that is, that's roughly where we're at with ideas. Is it's just like, it's all, everything's new and exciting because it's a beautiful space and we're excited to share it. But right now, I'm so sorry to drag you guys through this. This apparently is, the system. This is how
it's the process.
The process. Thank you. So we're not trying to surprise you, or I'm sorry that nobody came to you guys first. This is entirely new to us. We're not,
Direct to me. Thank you.
We're not trying to do anything malicious to our neighbors or surprise anyone or have crazy concerts or strip clubs or anything like that. We just we want to share. We want to share this beautiful property.
I understand. Okay, I think you've answered my question. Thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It's okay. No, you've answered. I asked you a question, you've answered it. So, all has to come out. It has to be done in public, and it's all going to be part of the process. So, I think that's it for now. You can have a seat. So, my question is to the board. I mean, I can maybe see recreational activities with theater programs and art classes and, sculpting and all that kind of stuff, and walking trails and yoga programs. I mean, I think that, for me, personally, that I see qualifying under recreational opportunities for the town where I don't quite see it, and I would like the attorney Duchesne's to explain this to me. He doesn't have to do it tonight, he can think about it, take it home for homework. How the venue to exhibit arts and crafts and have a venue like that that sells wares, how does that fall under recreation? That's what I need explained to me, personally me. I don't know how anybody else on the board feels.
Good question.
Jeff?
I can live with that.
I will do my homework, but I do want to leave you with this thought. You really hit the nail on the head when you spoke about your rec department. I've been involved with a number of rec departments in various towns. I've been involved with community centers that provide recreational programs. And most of these facilities, I think you would agree, sometimes publish a document of their recreational programs for the year. And they'll have everything in there from soccer programs, Little League, baseball, softball, tennis, art, music, cooking. I mean, it's all recreational activities, and more often than not, there is an opportunity for those people in the rec department's art class to have an art night to show their wares. So is the craft fair itself or the exhibition event itself total recreation? I think I'll be able to make an argument that it is. But it's certainly an ancillary component of the recreational activity that is the art class, or is the music class, or is the plant, you know, okay, kids get together and under the rec department programs and they do public gardens and planting. It's all considered recreational activities. And I guess I'd ask you this, and this is something I'm going to be thinking about. If what we're proposing is not a recreational activity, what is it? I know that early on, my client spoke with Mr. Burnett, and also with, I saw some emails going back with town council was involved in that very question. What is this that they're proposing? Clearly, once I got in and got the documents straightened out, it was not a commercial entertainment license, but rather it was a special permit that would allow for these uses. And we were directed, and I believe we agreed with both the building inspector and town council, that those activities would fall within that recreational category. Now, I know as council has said, you get to make that call ultimately. But I think in doing so, you should consider that your zoning enforcement officer and perhaps even town council did not disagree that those activities are recreational uses. What's recreational is somewhat in the eyes of the beholder. Some people might say it's not recreation if I'm not putting on equipment and exercising. There are people that believe reading is a recreational activity. So do we have book clubs here? I do believe, given your definition under your bylaw that says including but not limited to, it does open the door. I was accused of using that language and it said it made it unclear. Well, then maybe your bylaw is unclear, and has been suggested, maybe you want to clean that up. But given the current definition and the application and what people have told us, I think you can find that most, if not everything we've proposed, could be considered a recreational activity, and is by towns themselves. But I will do my homework. I will provide you a legal memorandum on the subject. But I'm also very concerned about your very point. Before I go off and spend a number of hours doing my homework, and my clients engage an engineer or a surveyor to put together a detailed parking plan, and we spend countless hours coming up with a defined activity list and timeframes and whatnot. I mean, that would be a significant amount of work, not only for us, but your planning board, because I'm going to go to your planning board. I'm going to bring the neighbors together perhaps and have a meeting, only to come in and be told, we don't think this is recreation. So I wonder if we might need to answer that question sooner than later.
Okay, well, maybe we could take a A straw?
I don't mean
vote?
tonight. I don't want to force you to do it tonight because you've asked for input, but I don't know, is there an interim step? Do we come back in 2 weeks and,
Well, maybe you do, yeah, maybe you do that and answer just this question before they go off and do other things. That's
Yeah.
not, it would not be approving the permit, certainly, but it would say,
Answer this question.
here are the categories that these would be considered recreational use categories. It doesn't say that you would agree to the permit, because it depends on what they come back with. There's a lot of other things you need to think about, right? That you've heard a lot of comments tonight, you've heard the presentation, you've heard from the planning board, there's not enough information, you yourselves
And
want
there's a
more
list I
information.
heard through public comment that needs to be addressed through this whole
Correct.
process, too.
Well, it also has to meet the special permit criteria.
Well, right, so you have all of that, but the threshold question is, before they go off and spend all that money, do you agree that what's being proposed, or any part of what's being proposed, is an indoor-outdoor recreational use? And he's not saying do that tonight, but come back when he provides information to you upon which you can make a determination before they go to that next step.
Is the board comfortable with that? You comfortable with that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is any of that in the packet?
yes?
Yeah.
It is, okay.
It's in the October 26th and the
The
October
October
19th
26 and 19.
submissions.
Portion.
18 and 19, my letters of 18 and 19 October clarified this transition from, we're not asking for a commercial entertainment license, we're asking for indoor-outdoor recreation, and I put together this list. The October 26th memo was a comment made to me that neighbors felt they hadn't had an opportunity to look at the stuff that had been submitted. So I just took everything that had been submitted, from my client's earliest submittals to all of my supplemental submittals, all of the plans, and I just put it in one big package, and I sent it in on the 26th and said, look, just so that there's no question that the board has everything.
I think that was what the confusing part to me is that, you know.
I gave you
there's-
everything.
There's all the old requests, there's all the new requests, and, you know.
Mr. Packer, I did not want any questions from someone questioning whether or not the information was available to the town, whether it was available to the public. So I just submitted everything in one big package, and I think I explained that in the cover letter that I'm saying.
Yeah, you
You
did.
probably have this, but my clients don't want anyone to think they didn't get an opportunity. So I just resubmitted a whole lot of stuff, and I apologize if it was confusing, but again, it was done in good faith in an attempt to make sure everyone could get to everything.
So I think what might be helpful,
Yep.
because the application conflicts with your letter in parts, that maybe perhaps when we meet, if we decide that this does qualify for indoor-outdoor recreation, which still we haven't determined that yet,
Right?
but let's say it meets that threshold and we move on, I think it might be beneficial that we go through the application and strike things out that aren't relevant.
Just amend it, Doug, just update it, I think.
That might be helpful.
So, as part of my submission before we meet again to discuss the application of whether this is
No, I wouldn't do that
recreation or
until
not,
after.
I'll include a fully redone application with that submission.
Because that's what they're asking for, right.
I think, would you guys like that?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Alicia, it seems to me to almost be broken down now for clarity, for me anyway, speaking for just me,
Yeah, well, that's you.
but I'm one of the people you need. The first step would be what we're discussing now, and I'll clarify that in a minute. The second step is whether it's beneficial, crosses all these things, and that's the special permit criteria.
Correct.
We're back on deciding kind of where it fits in the definition of outdoor recreational whatever. Where I'm a little stuck on and would need clarity would be what Alicia did say. and that's some of the other stuff seems to fit, where the nature of the outdoor events is recreational.
Okay.
So for me, that's where I need to be made to understand how that fits. Because I'm not sure I have a problem with the rest of it.
Yeah, I think
Which
parts
would
of
be
it would
conditioned
qualify
to
it, but I
daylight,
don't know about
maybe,
the whole kit and caboodle.
you know, for preliminary 4 times, whatever, but if it doesn't meet Peter's, if it doesn't meet where it is now for the board, then we're gonna have to go another way around it anyway, because it won't meet that criteria.
But remember, you need all 4 of us.
I understand. So, just to be clear, I'd request that we continue this hearing, not for a month, but perhaps to your next available meeting in a couple of weeks.
How does the first week in December sound?
Okay?
After Thanksgiving?
Whatever's available. In the interim, I will provide you legal memorandum justification as to why we believe these proposed uses qualify as
Or how.
indoor-outdoor recreation.
How they qualify, yeah.
Yes. Along with that, I will provide to you an amended application that is reflective of the exact information that we've
I
presented.
think that would be very helpful.
Okay, just so the record is clear and there's no confusion.
Then
Yeah,
we should have a site walk before.
And
we
let's
meet.
please do a site walk.
You want the site walk before, well, let's him come back first, then then it's gonna get cold.
It's not bad, then you're gonna
Time's
have
wasted.
to waste more
Yeah.
time and money.
All right, we'll schedule the site walk before then, too.
You really should see it.
Yeah.
So, Madam Chair, you're looking at December 1st, which is a Thursday, or December 5th, which is a Monday,
Or,
continued for what he just said.
do we wanna do it at a regular board meeting?
Yeah, Tuesday.
And when is
yeah.
that?
The second. The 13th. The 13th. Of December. The second and fourth Tuesday of the month we meet.
Okay, that's fine, I won't, I have a conflict that night, but that's fine. So I have a conflict on the 13th.
Okay, so we're gonna have to do it on another night. Let me just get my phone.
I can do it the 6th, which is the Tuesday before.
December 6th, okay. Well, we'll,
Excuse me, but, isn't Mr. Costa from your office? Could he
Yeah, as
fill it?
I happen to have some of his calendar on my phone too, and he's at a town meeting in Townsend that night.
so, yeah, I think we're gonna have to have 2 meetings in December. One on the 6th and one on the 13th. I'll cancel the one on the 27th. So that's between Christmas and New Year's. Are you available on the 6th?
I am.
Are you both available on the 6th?
Yep.
Attorney Duchesne, are you available on the 6th? Okay,
On the 6th, yes.
December 6th, yeah. And then we'll have a regular meeting the Tuesday after that, and then hopefully that'll be it for December. Okay.
So you would need a continuance to the date and time certain.
Yeah, so, I will entertain a motion to continue this public hearing to Tuesday, December 6th at 7 PM?
Motion to continue this hearing to Tuesday, December 6th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Now let's talk about a site walk. I think we should do it.
Saturday mornings.
Saturday morning work for everybody here? Is that good for you? Not this Saturday, because I'm out of town. How about next Saturday?
Yep, then everyone's around.
You talking on the 19th?
The 19th, yep. Everybody around the 19th?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Hmm?
The 19th work for the applicant?
I can be there.
Yes.
Okay.
What time
Um,
did you say?
Didn't
November 19th, we haven't set a time yet. What time do we want to meet? How about 10 o'clock?
That's fine.
Is that a good time, 10 o'clock?
Yeah.
All right.
10 a.m.? Okay, now, I guess, Martha, I'm going to ask Larry, since he's here from the planning board, do you guys want to join us? Do you think it's,
I would wait till they get their
Okay.
formal stuff, right?
okay. Okay. So, we have a site walk scheduled. Saturday, November 19th at 10 a.m. Can I have the address? Oh, there we go. It's right on the application. Sorry about that. It's getting late.
Correct, definitely.
It's getting late. Okay. And on that note, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.